It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until...
And welcome everybody to our daily gun show. Wait, what's going on? And we're doing the Ask Gun Questions episode, and we're doing it a day late, and now we're on track. So thanks, Tony, for joining us. Welcome.
Hey, man, glad to be here.
So I kind of did an abbreviated opening there. I was trying to click buttons, and I clicked the wrong button, so I guess that ended it. And we got comments, but the comments are from yesterday, so we'll see if anybody shows up on an off day. Is this super weird doing it on a Tuesday, or does this work into your schedule?
Oh, it works fine.
Wonder if we should do this on Sundays, because you got your other show. Is it better for you to do two shows in a row, or to do the shows like this on 2 different days? I could see how
I can do 2 shows. Yeah, I could do either or, whatever works. Doing 2 Saturday shows, at least I know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, boom, this
like
chopper time is
fills your
going to be
Saturday,
done for one day.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep doing Saturday then. But we'll see if anybody says anything today about the show. I forgot to do it on Instagram just as we were starting here. I remembered that you have to do Instagram separate. This will terminate streaming to Instagram. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I can salvage Instagram. Let me go find out. So we're going to learn something new tonight. So with Instagram, you have to go to Instagram itself, instigate a live video, and then give it a name, and then doing that as we speak here, then decide who's going to see it. You can make it private or public, or I guess members only or something. And then they give you a stream key. And then I'm going to take that stream key and see if I can schedule. No, all I can do is stop it. I was hoping maybe I could continue streaming. No. Does this terminate the whole show? Terminate streaming to Instagram live feedback undefined. Yeah, it just terminated Instagram. All right, well, now I know. I was kind of wondering if I could turn Instagram on after, but I guess not. So well, there's nothing to say to Instagram. We just want to have Instagram joining us. It's quite a few people join from Instagram, but nobody says anything. So I always say that, but I don't know if that's just going to be the way it is, or what am I trying to say? Is that like the nature of Instagram, or is that just the way people
watch Instagram?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're used to watching shows on Instagram and they don't ask you nothing. They're just telling you a bunch of stuff. And that's one of the things I didn't like about Instagram Lives when that was sort of a hot thing. What was that, like 3 or 4 years ago more? Even more than that, early. It was before the bullshit. So, there was a couple of channels that really did their thing on Instagram Live. And, like KD would always do Instagram Live. And it drove me nuts. That's about the only one I ever watched on any regular basis. You used to do some Instagram Live stuff too, I think.
Mm-hmm. I'd come on every now and again.
You got to watch it on your phone. And then, like I say, I just don't know if it's because it's being watched on a phone and because it's a different group. Like I'm used to YouTube Live only because it was free and we had a lot of people over here and people participated in it. So I liked it. But, I'm noticing that X Live, nobody says anything on X Live either. Nobody says anything on Instagram Live, and they never did. So I'm just wondering if it's like the culture. I don't know if it's the culture. It's just the nature maybe of having the thing in your hand, that because no one's saying anything, the people who go live don't ask anything. So, you know what I'm saying? I'm wondering if it's a self-fulfilling type of thing, that just because people have been watching it in their hands, kind of holding it. And I just assume when you're watching shit in your hands, you're like either on the toilet or you're in a waiting room somewhere, or you're like, in line for something. You're doing this while you're doing something else. It just doesn't maybe lend itself to, people. When I figure when people are watching YouTube, they're like, okay, I'm going to sit down, get something to eat and watch YouTube, or I'm going to sit down and instead of watching a movie, I'm going to watch YouTube. But for whatever reason, they've got a keyboard in front of them and they're, I don't know, always like they're part of a lot of YouTube shows. Like the comments are a big portion of YouTube shows. So maybe it's just I don't know if it's called culture or the nature or whatever, but anyway, it's like I keep saying, it's just annoying. I like having feedback from the audience, and without it, it just seems like here's what I got to say, and you're going to listen. And that's just not my ambition. That being said, do you have anything that you were going to chat about yesterday when we were going to go live and then didn't? Because obviously you.
No, because I kind of roll with it. So we have a new show, and you want to get out. You want to have some. You want to launch it and have some subjects that people want to talk about immediately. You know what I mean? Create some buzz, or
Right.
you say some things. And I was like, hey, let's get out and um, get out in front of it and try to throw some stuff up and see what sticks. But you also don't want to be too what is it? Just too freaking formula. So we just
So you're
decided to
gonna say, like,
go
too all
with
over the place. You have to like choose if you're going to be, like we're going to be here for 20 minutes and we're going to talk about three things, or you're going to, make it a conversation and it'll go off into tangents and, both attract a different audience and both attract a different host, I guess, or maybe a guest. So
yeah. So what we did, at least the last two, and again, it's us guys that do this for a living
three
in one way
instructors.
or the other. Three instructors of different kinds, in three different geographical and political locations, that are advocates, but again, at different levels of advocacy. Um, and of course, when you talk about Clayton, who's out in Minnesota, his partner in his business is his wife, who's also an instructor. So what we did was have an outline of what we're going to launch, what we're going to talk about. Our first episode was really us going, "Hey, this is the show, and this is us," and introducing ourselves. Second episode, we brought in Jen, and she talked about training, finding trainers, and the things that she has to deal with as a female, and talked about some of the things she's gone through to get where she is. And we went from there. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, the premise is, Jen, you're going to introduce yourself and talk about training and what you look for in a trainer, and then just let it roll. Because I don't want to keep, and I don't think any of us do, one of those scripted shows where you have to keep a tempo going. I mean, I have that already. You know what I mean? With Firearms Radio Network and Firearms Insider. We have four
Try
things
to
we're going
keep
to talk
it
about.
2 hours long or whatever.
Yeah, we have four things we're going to talk about, and we try to fit it in under an hour. So that's what we do. Um, I'm having fun with it. We had a good time last night making jokes, of course. And if you don't like dark humor, don't listen to the show. It's gonna hurt. But it's called Locked, Cocked, and Unfiltered, and it's like listening to friends who happen to be in. These are conversations we'd have off the air. I mean, these are phone conversations we've had, and I kind of like those as long as we keep going in the right direction. So hopefully you guys can listen and give us some feedback. We have pretty good listening audience over the last week. The numbers are going up. When you got to consider the only time people can hear about it is when we advertise it on our social media. And, you know, middle-aged firearms instructors, male middle-aged firearms instructors are only going to have so many followers on average, unless you're like big.
Well, even then, like, who would you call like the big firearms instructor, like Masada Ayub, or would you call it like the Haley, or would you call it like I don't know, something else? Like there's
Yeah. When it comes to large firearms instructor with large social media audiences, you got dudes like, Clint Smith, but he has a team that does that. So it's not really Clint at 70 freaking 8 years old on Instagram.
mm-hmm.
Um, Kevin. Kevin has a pretty good size as a firearms instructor. And guys in that vein, I'm trying to think of somebody like Provector's group,
Like I say,
Ken
it's hard
Scott.
to figure out like the a big one because one, there aren't any that are technically big. Like they have to be big
Yeah,
in the
none.
community. And then, well, I guess what I'm getting at is they are also trendy. So like I was going to say Taryn, I think, like if you call him an instructor, but
Mhm.
so they kind of have these like fads or whatever, like popularity goes up and down or whatever. But then in general, popularity goes up and down on training. But anyway, what I was going to get at is no matter who we picked as like the biggest, because there's probably,
Mhm.
we could probably all agree on some bigger ones. Those biggest ones are still not going to be household names to all shooters, right? Like,
Oh no.
so that's the thing. Like I was just getting it. You're getting like a uphill battle no matter what. Like there is no, oh, training. Let's all like no. There's nothing about any kind of training that all gun owners sit down and listen to. Like most time, a gun owner has to be incentivized or tricked or like somehow I guess incentivized to do training, right?
Hmm.
Like most people aren't just like, hey, you know what I'm going to do is go learn more about whatever I already bought. So you have to have some reason, not like a present, but like, or like a monetary gain, but like, I don't know, maybe something bad happened to somebody you know, and you're like, oh, dang, I need to know more about this. And that's my incentive to go train. But you know what I mean? People don't just decide to go training. So I think it's cool that you guys are doing a show to focus, well, on just, it doesn't sound like you're only focusing on training because that probably wouldn't go very far. But the way that you're going to
Yeah.
focus on, you're kind of figuring out what you're focusing on is what it sounds like, but that you're all
Hmm.
trainers. And that's like your common thing. Because, well, like I say, like it's just a tough, I don't know, say it's sort of like cars and driving. Like everybody likes cars, and you're either going to like where you go in your car, or what you do to your car, or how you drive your car. But nobody learns how to be safer around their car, right? Like you're either learning how to fix it or how to make it go faster, but nobody's worried about like, I don't know, how to put better safety lights on it, or how to use those, lights, or how to do the things that aren't flashy, I guess. Oh, maybe that's the thing. The fanciest instructors are probably the ones that are willing to be fancy or to do something
Hmm.
showy, try to get an angle on it or whatever.
And that's one of the things we spoke about last night was about the intimidation some people may feel because they were looking at the instructor online and they only saw, the Instagram bill drill, and they were like, "Oh my God, that guy did the bill drill in freaking 2 seconds. I'll never take his class. I'll never be that good." And I'm like, "Don't be intimidated by that because that's probably his best drill." You know what I mean? He did it like 75 times that day, and he put up the best one. Or like some of the dirt bags do, they just speed up the film. They increase the speed, not by a lot, but by enough that you go, what did I just see?" Or they may be that good. I don't know
But
if
the
you
thing
saw.
is that if your job is to do, I don't know, walk around and what's the bill drill? I don't know that one.
Mm, two to the chest, one to the head.
I thought maybe I've seen one where you'll put out, like, let's say you got your row of targets, like your cardboard targets on the line or
Hmm.
whatever, and then you've got that area in front of the targets. You'll put a target here and a target over there, and then you'll walk in front of this target and back, and then around the front of that target, around the back, and then back, and you make like a figure eight around these two targets as you're shooting the targets on the line, and that gives
Hmm.
you like a way to move your trunk, like move your around your hips or whatever, like move while you're
Yeah.
walking, whilst paying attention to a 180 for safety, and just just to give people that kind of concept of walking and stuff. And then when you walk past the front target, the target you're walking around, you have to stop because otherwise you're going to hit the target that's supposed to be like a good guy or something, or a pole or whatever. So it gives you the idea of like using your peripherals to like stop shooting. So it's a fairly basic drill on the surface. Like if someone saw somebody doing that drill, they'd go, "That's baby stuff. That's a baby step. That's not even a thing." But in reality, especially for people that haven't done anything like that before, walking with a gun
Hmm.
and then shooting while you're walking,
Hmm.
like a lot of people didn't grow up shooting BB guns, so they've never done that before. And with a gun, it's super scary because you've never even thought about doing something. You think guns are super dangerous. So it's a big deal for a lot of people. And sometimes I've only seen a couple of instructors even do the drill, but I thought you're talking something like that where it would take, I don't know what to call it, like coordination or like practice. But the thing is, somebody that does that every weekend, like that's their thing, is to demonstrate that every weekend, they're probably really good at it. But that doesn't mean that
Hmm.
they're good at like a slight variation to it. That's all I was getting at, is like sometimes people can be really good at a thing, and that's the thing that they do when they show it off, and it's not like they're trying to just be good at one thing, but that's the one thing they happen up doing. So that's the one muscle they exercise. So yeah, they look really, really good at it, but it doesn't necessarily apply to everything that they, their whole ability isn't at that level. It's just a certain task they're able to do without breaking a sweat.
Yeah, that's why we were talking about. We are like, don't get intimidated by that. That's why you take the class. You don't show up the class knowing how to do everything. If you knew how to do everything, there'd be no need to take a class. And just little things like that that maybe people don't say. It's not just take a class, take a class, take a class. And we talked about readiness as a female. How after you get into a vulnerable population, whether it be you're a lady, so you're smaller stature, or you're older and got some gray hairs and don't look like you move as fast, especially if you have a limp or walk with a cane or some kind of assistance. It's like all of that means you just have to be more aware of what's going on. And I think that's important to point out more than once. Like training is not just for the 20 somethings that want to pretend they're in Mogadishu. It's for anyone who wants to take a firearm to protect themselves. You want to get better at it. You want to find out what you what is it. Uh, you don't know what you don't know about it, and it's important that you take it. And then you'll learn other things. You'll learn situational awareness. Also, you'll learn how fast can you shoot accurately. What is the distance you can actually hit a target at? All that stuff, I think, is really important to know, not just assume. And training teaches you that. And the more training, the more advanced you get, the better off you'll be at this thing. And it's not wanting to be a warrior. It's wanting to be good at this martial skill that you spent a considerable amount of money, especially if you live in a place like New Jersey, just owning. I mean, to get the carry permit, it's guaranteed that you're going to spend a minimum of about $500 on top of purchasing a firearm. I think if I put everything together in my head right, from zero to carrying a gun, just by doing the mandatory stuff, is probably about $500.
That's super interesting. And now that made me think, and I did a thing of maps for a while. Like I was trying to illustrate different situations via the maps. And once I started building them, I had the template and it was easy to keep making them. So I made a whole bunch of different maps, right? Like different ways of thinking about our different laws. But I've never seen one or attempted to do one until you started saying that, to think uh, two things: time and money. So, how long it takes to get a permit, and then how much it costs. Because
Hmm.
when I did the map thing, New Jersey might have, and I don't remember anymore, but states might have, I shouldn't say New Jersey. So, it's just states might have a license to buy. So, you have to first get permission to even own. Some states have a
Hmm.
permit to own. So, that means you have to have it once you buy a gun. You don't have to get permission to buy, I should say. You have to have a permit to own or a permit to buy, or sometimes both. And then registration, but then maybe like a permit or a class or something that you have to apply for and get. And then sometimes you have to pay for the background checks or like the fingerprints and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Actually, you pretty much
Yep.
always have to pay for fingerprints. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's just sometimes it's cheaper than other states. And then you're finally your permit, and that might be, I don't remember what Arizona is, but ours is closer to like the $26 or $40, like whatever it actually costs. And then
Hmm.
each year they adjust the price, or every so many years they adjust the price, because like if the state isn't costing, if it isn't costing $64, only costs 57, then they change the permit to 57. So it's like pretty low at some states. And then I think it was Indiana had like a lifetime for $300, which is pretty cheap when you think about it. And then other states, it's the other way. It's like $300 for a 5 year or 2 year permit or something crazy. So it would be interesting to see a map where all the states are laid out. Maybe not a map, but some sort of a list where all the states are compared with how long it takes to get that. Because I just talked about price, but some of them it's 6 months to get this level. Then once you're approved, another 8 months. Once you're approved this month, then whenever the sheriff gets around to it, type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's like because unless you want to get in that conversation, it's not a conversation that most people are going to have. You know what I mean? Like, what? Okay, it costs this much. Like Jersey, I need a firearms ID card. That's going to be, I don't know, about $125 when you count the fingerprints and getting the card itself and paying the fee for that. Then you hopefully went into it and put your pistol purchase paperwork in at the same time. Because if not, they're going to make you dance a whole nother dance. So now you got the paperwork. You have to get the prints, your fingerprints, and that's $65 alone. So it keeps ticking up at every step you take. And then you go to the store to get your firearm, right? And that's going to be, if you ordered it online and had it sent to someone, that could be as much as $100. If you couldn't find what you wanted in the store, or you had something particular you wanted and they couldn't get, that's going to cost you another $100 because that's usually what they charge, to do the background check and the transfer. And then you finally get the gun in your hot little hand, and let's pretend that you already know how to shoot. I mean, like you came from somewhere else. This isn't your first firearms purchase. It's just your first firearms purchase in New Jersey. All right, cool. You can jump right to the part where you just have to take the class, the permitting class. That's going to be $200 to $250, depends on who you go through. Then you got to put that paperwork in again, and you might have to get another set of freaking fingerprints, even though you just got a set of fingerprints, because you need prints for the license now, even though you had to get the exact same thing done just to get the pistol purchase permit. That's the kind of bull crap you're dealing with here. And again, like I said, you're at $500 before you know it. That's not including the cost of the pistol. And that's to exercise your right. Just getting governmental permission to carry your firearm. That's how ridiculous it is. And again, that's if you get a new gun, because you could have moved from a state where you already had a carry permit, so you can leave the gun part, the firearm part out. But if you moved to Jersey and you just had regular, duty size or bigger firearms, and you never considered carry, all right, now you got to get a carry gun. It's crazy. Most people don't think about it. And then when you start talking about it, for a second, they may try to hang with you, and then the eyes start to roll up to the top of their head because you're just laying out a whole bunch of things, and they're like, that doesn't make sense. Because it starts getting like a really complicated math problem after a while. And if you're not in the math, you're not really going to follow.
As
But I
we're
mean,
talking here, I tried to get the
go ahead.
robots to give me a list. May be doing it right now. Okay, so I said to the robots, using current state DPS websites, list each state cost involved and time involved to get a CCW permit in the state. Include permit to own and permit to buy in the cost and time calculations. Include all 50 states with the largest wait time, or in order of the longest wait time to the least. New York, New Jersey, California, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, Illinois, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware. Amazing. And then Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Nevada. All the states that are under attack the most often. What do you know?
Mhm.
And then Michigan, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. So interesting. And costs vary. New York, typically 100 to 400, it says. New Jersey, $50 additional fees for fingerprint. So it's not right, huh? California,
Oh God, it's
200
so
to
wrong.
300. Hawaii, $10.
Hawaii, because
Um,
that's how we're gonna say it now.
I like to say it culturally appropriately, and that's why I say Maryland, because that's how they say it in Maryland. $75. Massachusetts. I have no idea how they say Massachusetts.
I mean,
$100. So it's wrong, but that is, at least I got the form. Like, it made my list and everything. So it might be in the right
yeah.
order. It's not quite 100% with the fees, but to give it
Mhm.
credit, it's very difficult for even a human to go figure out what the current fees are for every state for all the stuff I just mentioned, like permit to purchase, permit to buy, permit to own, and then CCW permits on top of it, or whatever else you might need. So
Yeah,
if
I
it was
mean,
something like go find out the cost of the driver's license, the robot could do it because that's a little more defined task. But this had kind of some loose edges to it, so it would have been a tough ask for a current robot.
yeah, it's like, all right, well, how much is it to? I mean, like, how do you ask this question? How much is it? What are the fees associated with purchasing a firearm, purchasing a handgun in the state of New Jersey, and getting a handgun carry permit? And it's like, even me living here wording it like that, I left out a couple of steps in the question because you still need a firearms ID card, a pistol purchase permit. You have to get fingerprints. That's 65. The permit is 50. If you get more than one firearm, let's say you're going to get a handgun, right? And one of the things that people have been told, shoot, a few things people have been told. If you can get a 22 version of your gun, that makes a great training gun and allows you to put a lot of work in for less money. If you get a carry gun, get two in case you do use one. You still have the exact same gun that you can use when the police take that first one. So even if I said that, that's $50 a permit they want, one for each gun. And I don't think I'm being crazy because I continually tell people get more than one permit because you're getting in the shooting. And 30 days into this, you might want a second firearm because you have changed who you hang out with. You've gone to the range. You've shot your gun now because it was exciting and new thing. You're like, holy crap, I'd like another one, or I'd like a smaller one, or I like the way this feels, but maybe I should get it in I don't know, I got it in 45. Maybe I should get it in 9 also, or 40 or 380. Who the frick knows? But I've seen more people have a regret in Jersey by only getting one pistol purchase permit with their first gun purchase because they like, man, I have to go through this entire process again to get a second handgun.
You
And
would
I
never
just
know
bought
because you
one.
buy a car, you buy a popcorn machine, like most things, you buy one of it and you're satisfied unless you
Hmm.
become a total nut. But with guns, yeah, it's not real hard to see where you could use a second one or a third one.
Yeah, and it sucks because these guys are like, dude, even though they say it takes 30 days, it took 90 days for me to get my first one. And that was just 3 months ago. And now I have to do it again. I'm like, yeah, you have to do it again. So your little adventure, the I'm going to buy one handgun, has taken up most of the year to get your second handgun. It's
I'm gonna
taking
take
you a year to go from one to two, none to two guns.
I'm gonna take this into a direction that I always take things, but just seeing it from this angle makes me think about it because somebody was talking about this the other day that it's only those 9 states. And I think it's since we've been talking, but I know that in the last year or so, or maybe a little bit longer than that, but I don't think of it as 9 states that have bad laws anymore because that downplays it tremendously. It's still 50% of the population lives under bad laws. It just happens to be that they've roped them under 9 states, right? Geographically or whatever. You just happen, the states that are affected are only 9, but they're the most populous of our states. So um, I guess what I was getting at is that looking at it normally that bothers me that it's something that's underplayed and we don't think about it. We think, it's just those 9 states, and once we figure that out, we're done. But in reality, like I say, it's 50% of the population is living this way, and that means 50% of the population and 50% of the voters, I guess I should say, are willing to vote away rights for the people that are you know in those states, I guess. So that being said, I think that there isn't a massive opportunity for I'm going to just have to say the national level, state level organizations because they're the ones who are the players in this mix. But I guess I was thinking of it as if it wasn't that way, if the states that were most populous had great gun laws, the states that had bad gun laws would have no hope, like no chance ever, right? Like, what I mean? If the massive majority of the people had great gun laws, the people living
Hmm.
in tyranny would be screwed because people who are living good lives do not worry about people that aren't. It's just the
Don't
nature of
care in
our
the least bit.
world or whatever. So, um, having, if we started looking at it as, yeah, we've had a lot of good things. We have constitutional carry in 29 states. We have concealed carry in all 50, but we still have 50% of the population can't own just pretty much name common things, a gun with a detachable magazine, for example. Like there's a bunch of crazy tyranny that 50% of our population lives under. And I think we need to stop looking at it as 9 states and look at the 9 states as like, hey, we can affect 50% of our population by just affecting 9 states. And, getting 29 easy states to get constitutional carry. Okay, some of them weren't easy, but a lot of them were very easy. That's an accomplishment, but it's not something we need to hang our hat on and be like, we're done. Like, we finished. Like,
Yeah.
look what we accomplished. Like, there would be a real accomplishment to like change Vermont, let's say, which is definitely possible because Vermont just barely flipped over, and it's all about public perception. For pretty much all of human history, not human history, but all of American history, Vermont has had no gun laws, and there's been no issue in Vermont ever. I mean, there's just hasn't been. If there was, I can confidently say that, because if there was, the antis would be using that all over the place, right? And Vermont would have turned a long time ago, but they can't. In fact, they only had to get Vermont to flip over when nobody was paying attention. Anyway, I think that if we looked at it like, let's get Vermont, then let's get maybe, I don't know, Connecticut or Maryland or some state that's kind of, but not completely anti, or maybe Washington and Oregon. They should be easy flips, right? We got states, or we have organizations that exist there. Same with Colorado, really. Should be easy states to flip if you look at them on the big scale. And then start to use those accomplishments to figure out how to work states like Massachusetts and New Jersey. But anyway.
Yeah, they'd have to put in work. And like you said, people do not. They do not care if they're in
They
effect.
like being on a winning team. They like tapping in the last whatever 3-point shot. Like, they like that
Mhm.
winning fucking shit, but they do not like let's roll up our sleeves and start fighting again. Let's try to fight like 3 people at the same time. Like nobody's giving anybody awards for being able to fight 3 people at the same time awards. And there's a couple of people that are in, fights like that where they're fighting 3 different enemies, essentially, state, groups and individuals. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean, and it's boring to them, right? They're like, "Oh man, we have to hear about this." It's like, yeah, because you live there, you don't care about this. Let me tell you how hard it is. Let me
that's
tell
what I'm
you how
saying.
much
Like, it
money it
shouldn't be like
costs.
a work thing. It should be like, hey, guns are cool. And you know who can't have guns? Half of our population. So why don't we change that? Like, that would be a cool thing to do. And instead of making it like a chore, let's make it like a cool thing to do. And like, we know this is going to take 1,000 axe blows. So let's start counting and see, who gets the last axe blow in, and, who gets the most axe blows, and who gets the best way of figuring it. Like, that's all you have to do is look at the situation a little bit differently. Look at it as a challenge instead of uh, you know, what's the word, like an unwavering certainty, and then just start appreciating the contributions to chopping it down. And then what happens is people get on board, right? Like, oh crap, all the spotlight is over there on people attacking Massachusetts. I need to get the spotlight. I need to get to Massachusetts. We're just not at that point yet. I'm going to
Yeah,
pull up the spreadsheet with all the questions, because we haven't answered questions since February, or answered a question since February, and we did get a bunch in. We have some in March here already. So I'm going to go to the
cool.
last one, which isn't just a statement. So maybe I'm missing something, but it says firing pin on a Bond Arms snake slayer. So maybe something's missing there. I'm not missing anything, right? Like, or at least I'm not hitting meeting there. So we'll go on to the next one. My friend has several guns that she would like to give me. I have several guns already, and I know that there is a transfer fee. However, the guns are registered in. Let me get this to show up. There we go. The guns are registered in our father's name, and it is unknown if he is dead or alive. His whereabouts are unknown. Can we legally transfer these guns? So they don't say what state they're in, so we're just going to have to attempt some like general advice. But let's see if that's sent as a comment. What do you think? Friend has several guns she'd like to give me. I have several already, and I know there's a transfer fee right off the bat. Like, what the hell? Who has a transfer fee? However, the guns are registered in her father's name, so they must live in a state where the guns are registered, and it is unknown if he is dead or alive, because that can be a situation, right? His whereabouts are unknown, and can we legally transfer these? I'll just start it off with, I live in a state, like we were just talking about. I live in one of the states where that's not a thing. There's no such thing as a transfer fee. Now, there may be a fee if an FFL is involved. If you, for some reason, want to take your guns in most states, okay, I'll start it this way. In most of the states, you can just give your guns to somebody. They can buy them off you, whatever. Like, as long as it's mutually consent or whatever, there's guns are just like buying, a screwdriver from somebody. Nobody cares. In those 9 states, maybe a couple more, there's issues where you can't do private transfers. I'd have to go look. It's called private transfers. Like if there's any issues with private transfers in your state, that means the state says that there needs to be a universal background check. So there needs to be a background check involved in the transfer of firearms, even between friends and family and stuff. So, or extended family, I guess. So, assuming this friend isn't family and you're in one of those states where there is a requirement for a universal background check, then yes, a state or a gun shop might charge for that service because otherwise they just go broke doing that for free, right? So if that's the case, that's going to be a nominal fee. And usually if you're doing like more than one gun, there's some sort of a discount for the subsequent ones because it's really the time it takes them to be on the phone. And if they're going to be on the phone for 20 minutes for one gun and 25 minutes for 6 guns, they usually charge appropriately. They're not charging you the full price for every single gun. And then as far as the last part, whether you can legally do it if the guy is alive or dead, that's a good question. I've never lived in a place where guns were registered, so I don't know the ins and outs of that except for from outside looking in. So I don't know, but I'm assuming if a gun is in somebody's name, it might be a sticky wicket or whatever it's called to get out of that one. And then I'll give it to Tony, who actually had to live with some of this shit.
All right. Let me. Okay. I don't want to sound like a jerk off, but I live here and I've been on the forums, and they may not even live in a state where guns are registered. That's just a pop culture thing that they think every gun is registered. Like,
Definitely.
now, I
Everybody
mean,
thinks guns are registered. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I don't mean to insult them if that's not the case, but I'm putting that out there. Many people just assume every gun is registered. Okay, another thing. Is it even a thing you have to do in your state? It might be something that was done when the gun was purchased. It doesn't have to be done again. And it's just private property that transfers. One of the things I suggest to people, instead of going on a Facebook forum or even going into a gun store and truthfully even calling the police departments, because many of them, unless you're talking to the firearm division directly, have no clues what the laws are. And another thing, uh, they just might want to make you register your guns anyway, and they give you stuff that's not really the law, but they know you don't know any better. So, bam, I got your gun registered now because I'm a cop that doesn't believe in the Constitution, and I think every civilian should have their guns registered, just so we can confiscate them if we have to. Okay, now here's my suggestion: join U.S. Law Shield or any of those organizations. Hold up. Not because they can save you from a shooting, but because many of them, as part of your membership, provides a phone number that you can actually speak to a lawyer that knows the law in your state. That's the only reason I bring that up. Whether you're going to use it or not for the thing, if you get the minimum, oh, check it out. I'm a U.S. Law Shield rep. I ain't doing this as a damn anything, but this is what I tell people. If you want to know the law, speak to a lawyer. And one of the least expensive ways you can do that is join one of like U.S. Law Shield at their minimum, and you can actually talk to a lawyer from your state that actually practices and knows firearms law, and they could give you that information. And if you use 2A4E as your code, you'll get a discount, and the money will kick it to us. I ain't being a dick, but I don't know where you live, so I can't give specific answers. And that's what I put out to anybody instead of asking questions online and in the forum where people will give you horrible information.
And they might be with good intent. They just don't know. Maybe they know old
Yeah,
info or they just think they know, but yeah, people don't. Yeah, it's tough.
they
I
heard
usually
something from their brother-in-law, the cop.
I was going to say this to the next question too, but like usually if I get the same answer 5 times and there's just 1 or 2 outliers, then I pretty much know what the answer is. It's probably that answer. But if you get 5 different answers, go find an expert.
Well,
You're not,
here's the crazy
you're not
thing. In
going to
New
figure out
Jersey,
what
many,
right.
many, 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 many people believe you can't have hollow points in this state to the point that it's like, oh, everybody knows that, except it's not true at all. You can have hollow points. You can transfer hollow points. You can da hollow points, but people just don't know.
Well, but what, you can get arrested for hollow points also?
You could get arrested for hollow
Anyway,
points if you don't have. But it's like, yeah,
but they take that all the way to like they're illegal.
yeah, they're illegal. It's just like, no,
And it's
no,
frustrating
they're
because what are
not.
you supposed to do? Hopefully the law goes away. So ideally nobody has to memorize the stupid bad law, but really there's a bad law. And because nobody's affected, or for few people generally are affected by it, it's just uh, generalized, I guess.
Hmm.
Okay, here's a good one. Here's a real question from an actual person. Is this on YouTube? Thanks for it's a new screen name. Pico. So, okay, how about this? Why is 380 more expensive than 9? It's the same round, but less material. It's
Because
a good
how
question.
380
I
is
don't know if
made.
anybody's asked that specifically, at least in a long time. So that's a great question. It's a one that I guess if you're not buying 380, maybe you don't notice. But even if you're just a 9 millimeterist and you're at the store looking, you might notice that your round is so much cheaper than all the others. I'm not saying it's subsidized like corn by the government, but the real answer is that companies make these things or factories make these things, and 9 millimeter gets made a lot, and it probably gets made. I don't know, like if I don't know how they work this, but let's say that they have 12 months to work, and 10 months of that they're going to be making 9 millimeter. So they know that they're going to need to take down the machines because they're not going to buy separate machines for every caliber. They change the machines to shoot whatever or to make whatever caliber. So they'll be making 9 millimeter for let's say 10 months realistically, and then those other 2 months they're going to make every other caliber, right? And 380 is somewhere in the mix. That's what Shot Show is for. They go to Shot Show and then the word on the street is everybody wants 380. So and so made a new 380 and everybody wants 380. So they go, okay, it sounds like our orders for next year are up on 380. Why don't we do 9 months at 9 millimeter and we'll do a full month of 380. So it's something like that. Their machines operate, let's say 24/7. They can make as much money as they can in a year, and they gauge demand. And 380 is just at such a small demand compared to the other calibers that the time they give the machines to make 380 is limited, and it only makes X amount of 380, and that's why it costs more because there's only so much of it. But you're right, it does use less materials. I think if the roles were swapped and it was like 6 months of the year they're making 9 millimeter and 6 months of the year they're making 380, I think 380 would cost less. But that's my generalization of like my my point of view on it. But I don't know if you have a different.
No, I 100% agree. Yes, scale. Was it economics of scale? I think that's what they say.
Yeah, exactly.
They just, yeah, they make a heck of a lot more of it. And the reason they make more is because 9 mil and 380 is made on the same machine. I mean, it's just the casing itself that's longer. The 9 millimeter case is a longer 380 case. So 380 is a short 9 mil. I mean, in Europe, it's called 9 millimeter Kurtz, and Kurtz means short. So they don't run them at the same time. And
They probably
380
when
is
you
not
say
as
that, they
popular.
probably do them next to each other, right? Because we're right. All they got to do is feed it a different length cartridge, or yeah, cartridge,
Hmm.
and then change the dials a little bit to put in less powder. But it's probably the same. Is it the same projectile? Do you know?
Hmm.
So
Oh no,
probably
380s have like 90. Some has 100, and 9 millimeter starts with like 115
okay.
usually.
So it's not like the complete swap out, but yeah. So I think that's probably it. Another option might be that 9 millimeter is often considered the uh, the caliber of the homeless. So 380, they know that people are going to be more established in their lives, a more sophisticated gun owner, so they're going to be able to handle the cost in stride. Um, yeah, I think so. And then I think like the 25s and stuff that all applies, but I think it's also when it gets smaller. There's just more, the machines are more finicky and they have to be adjusted all the way down or all the way. So I think when you get into the small stuff, it gets expensive just because it's more tedious to build the stuff. But then, and I don't know, there's 22, but 22
Yeah,
machines, you don't run
but
into that
again,
problem. 22 machines just make
it,
22 all day long, every day.
and again, it's economy of scale. there's millions of 22 rounds being made compared to, like, I'm sure there's tens of millions of 22 rounds being made every year compared to centerfire rounds of every caliber.
Oh yeah, I think there's whole factories of 22. And then same thing. Like they'll probably do 11 months of 22 long rifle, and then a month of 22 short or something, or 17 HMR and 22 short, because there's just no demand for it. And then I don't know how Magnum fits into there, but anyway, I think I only know that, or I say that because I highly suspect it. Because what year was it? Was it before 13? I think it was before 13, because when Obama did his stupid executive actions, that wasn't like the first time the gun community looked at each other and went, oh shit, like we're a gun community and we're online together. I think it was some of the shortages and stuff where everybody got together and was like complaining and moaning and groaning and letting each other know about good prices and bad prices, just because this internet was new. But weren't there some like shortages in the 2000s before 13 where
Hmm.
one of them was the 22 factory burned down? And I can't remember. It might have been after 13. I'd have to think about it for a minute. I just haven't ever been in a, like, people with grandkids were the people that I noticed were having the most problems, or instructors, people that needed ammo like all the time because they were shooting their ammo. But everybody I know just shoots ammo when it's cheap, and then we don't shoot ammo. We just don't go shooting when it's expensive. So, when it would be times of high prices, I would just shoot less. But I know people that had to shoot all the time would complain and moan and groan. But 22 ammo got insane for a while. Like it got very, very, very expensive because if I
Hmm.
remember right, they explained that I think at the same time one factory went down because they were expanding. Like, okay, this is a good time to shut ourselves down and then, just not produce 22 ammo for a while. And then at the same time, some other factory burned down or something, or some stage of the process burned down, and some other factory who would normally have taken up the slack also burned down. So now the industry went from having like, one third of its production lost to having like two, three quarters of its production lost. And all we had for a while was, what's that stuff from Mexico? Is it
Aguila.
Aguila? Yeah, Aguila or whatever. That was like all we had for a long time. And that company must have just made $1 billion during that time because they're on the scene now. Like that's what I think what brought that company onto the scene. Like they were there and they made some high end ammo, but when all the 22 was gone, that was about all you could get. And they must have just made bank. And then those other companies, had a new factory, one of them intentionally, and the other one because they burned down, they had to make a new factory. So I'm sure Aguila was like, okay, we better turn this money into investment. Otherwise, those other companies are going to leave us in the dust. Because Aguila was still cooking, but they were cooking with their old ass factories, probably from World War One or something. Like when was 22 invented? A long time ago. It probably, what I'm saying? Like I bet you those
Yeah.
22 factories were old.
Hmm. Yeah, you gotta, like, when do you replace the machinery making your 22 ammo? Like, it's printing
Only
money.
when you have to.
Like, yeah, yeah, it's like it's printing money for you. It's
And
just shooting
it's funny,
$100 bills
I think
out.
it just takes. Well, I know that from watching them make nine. Nine comes out of a ribbon, like like a really really thick wire of lead, like a ribbon of lead.
Hmm.
And I guess a ribbon would be flat, but a really thick wire of lead is what they make nines and stuff out of. Because there's only lead in a portion of the nine anyway. But I'm guessing 22 is the same way. It must be like an extrusion of like this cord of lead that just goes over to another machine and gets like smushed into a 22. Because, you know what I mean? Like they're not going to pour melted lead to fill a 22 cavity and then wait for it to cool and all that. Pretty sure they're just taking a cord and smushing it into the bullet. So anyway, I'm just saying, like, I don't think there's any wear and tear on a 22 bullet maker. You know what I mean? Except for cleaning it, it's probably more wear and tear from the brushes that clean it than the materials going through it.
True.
Let's see. I still have 3 boxes of 22 I picked up from Big Five for $20. Yeah, exactly. There was a time though, like say when the shortages happen, like people, you start to see how many people are shooting 22. There's a reason they make that much 22, and it's not people like me who own a 22 and have, I mean, I'd probably have 3,000 rounds of ammo easily, right? Like that's only 6 boxes of 22. So what do I care? Like I can go shoot 22 forever with them with the ammo I bought years and years and years ago. But not everybody's like that. There's a lot of people that shoot 22 a lot. Like say with grandkids or scout troop, or like what Derek's doing with the kids version of what you're doing, kind of shooting on the
Hmm.
regular, and then just probably well, then I guess all the kids that are shooting competitions, like they must be just plowing through the ammo,
Well,
practicing
they're
stuff.
playing. I'm laughing because they're shooting more than likely. They're shooting precision 22 ammo, which is a whole nother level of damn. How much did that cost you? Because the
And that's
guns they put them in.
that always costs more. But like let's say back in the day, like a box of 500 22s would cost you $9 or something, and then a box of fancy 22s, a box of 50 would cost you $6 or something dollars, like almost as much as buying 500. Like so, when the boxes of 500 went up to $40, the boxes of expensive stuff didn't change as much. So
Hmm.
only because they were already super expensive and nobody was buying them. And even when people were willing to pay a lot for that bulk ammo, they didn't switch over and buy all the high end stuff. They may have like the first 2 weeks or something, but as soon as the stores restocked, I never saw like the
Yeah,
high end
they were out
stuff
of there.
disappear.
They
Because
weren't
most,
buying Elite Precision Olympic.
right. But the people that do, like the people that shoot, like your kids going to whatever, like camp or training or something to learn how to shoot, get better. You're buying that ammo by the not pallet, but you're buying that in bulk because your kid's going to shoot it, and you don't want to pay $15 a box unless you're crazy. You're trying to buy that stuff at $7 a box. How many thousands do I have to buy to get it at $7 a box? So you're buying that, and they know that. They probably have that calculated in. That's what SHOT Show's for. That's when all
Yeah,
the shooters
and I
call
mean,
the companies and say, "Looks like this year we're going to need a lot of 22 Magnum." We've been saying that for 5 years, and then the company goes, "Okay, it's been like 5 years. Let's make 22 Magnum," and then guaranteed nobody will shoot 22 Magnum for the next 3 years, right?
yeah, right. Well, you have what you call it that happens and comes in. You have things like Smith and Wesson dropping a new one, and Kel-Tec dropping a new 22 Magnum also, and because that happens in trends. I don't know if people notice it or not, but all of a sudden it became a 22 Magnum world for a little bit. And it was like, why? Because, well, one company dropped it and they saw increase in sales, and then the other companies jumped on it. That's what they do.
We should have a show just about 22s or something. 'Cause 22 Magnum is amazing. I really like 22 Magnum. It's not my favorite caliber,
Yeah,
nothing, but I do like it. It is a fun caliber. Pico is
yeah,
saying, I'm in
22 Magnum out of a rifle.
Pico Rivera, California, and when you try to take the brass for scrap, they call the police. I've definitely seen some altercations almost at the range. I volunteered at a range for a number of years out here in Tucson, and I guess most people, when you go to a range, like this is from my experience, like you go to a range and you're there, and you might pay attention to other people shooting or like the other guns that are there, and then you leave, right? And then you go on with your day, and you don't even think about the range anymore. People that go to the range every Thursday, like I was doing, you meet all the people that are there on Thursdays after a little while because you figure out there's a bunch of people that are here on Thursdays. Wow, look at that. And then if you work at the range, you figure out there's also people that show up at the range every day because they're retired or that's their like passion or whatever, or maybe they're developing a gun or cartridge or something. So there's all these different levels, but I think 99% of people just go to the range and leave and don't realize that there's like a whole thing going on at the range. Like there's so many people that live at the range. Not like a lot of
Mhm.
people, but every range has their community, and there's going to be people like for whatever reason are there all the time, and there can be some like certainly can be some like traditions or some like what's the word for that, like oh, you're gonna leave those for Charlie. Like Charlie picks those up. Like you don't ever pick up
Oh
38.
yeah,
Charlie picks those up. There's that kind of stuff.
everybody knows. Everybody knows you don't touch Charlie's. If you shoot 300 Magnum, it belongs to him. Who? Who the hell is Charlie?
And then there's just there's like it's just probably the same thing if you hung out at a dirt bike track or a dog park or something. Like, oh no, you don't use that bench when so and so shows up. Her dog pees on it or something.
Yeah,
But that's cool. I don't know where Pico Rivera is, but I like eating pico. You know what pico is? You got pico up in New Jersey?
Hmm.
I don't know if that's a regional thing.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty funny because most people, because you're not from here, don't know how the immigration thing moves. And in Jersey, it goes straight up. Like once they hit Texas, Arizona, straight to freaking Jersey.
Well, what I've noticed from driving around the country is everybody knows what a Betos is now. Like, you know, the Mexican restaurants that take over, like an old Jack in the Box or whatever old, um, what's the fish place? The Long Johns or
Long
something.
John Silver. Yeah.
They go out of business and they make, you know, well, Betos or Filbertos or one of those. And those things are, I'd rather eat that than any kind of factory food. Although it's probably factory food at this point. But it's still short order cook type of stuff, you know, big griddle. And anyway, so those kind of restaurants are everywhere. Where back in the day when I was a kid, there was Mexican restaurants everywhere, but they were the kind where you had to go in and sit down and eat, and you know, not a drive through.
Hmm.
Had consistently inconsistent. Like everybody had their own flavor, and wherever that chef came from or cook came from or whatever, or maybe the person who taught the cook, the person who owns the restaurant, you know, they want it made this way or they're making their beans that way. Back in the day, no one ever really paid attention that there was like variety, but
Mm-mm. Well,
I don't know.
well, what happened? I mean, this is just what I heard the last couple of days. Um, there was the Chinese food mafia, like they are with Chinese restaurants. Like many of the Chinese restaurants are owned by immigrants from the same area of China,
I was just gonna say I
and
saw
they
a
only.
movie about that. The restaurants when that like wave happened. Was it from the 50s? Was it like after World War II maybe? When they were
Hmm.
essentially like, hey, if you go to America, you can get a restaurant. Here's how. And so they all kind of did the same thing because they all got taught by the same people or all did the same like pipeline.
Well, they came from the same area, and then of course you get the businesses involved, and they go, "Hey, we tell everybody to use this. Like if you want it, make it easy." And then all of a sudden, there's only like three places that you can get supplies at a Chinese restaurant, and those companies profit from it, and they know this is the food Americans like to eat, and they create the menu.
Yep.
That's
And
why all your Chinese
that's
food
why the
is the
menus
same in
represent.
every.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, you think a country with over 1 billion people in it all eat freaking orange chicken? Like, no.
But that all kind of that I don't know what you'd call that, like that happened, right? Those restaurants got created and then multiplied and became an established part of our country.
Hmm.
um I'm wondering, yeah, what's if that same thing is happening with the Mexican restaurants or not. I wonder if the cartels have any I'm suspect the cartels would have some, you know, I don't want to say, I'm gonna say their cartels are involved at some level, I suspect, right? Like that's a factor.
Yeah, I mean, they took over the entire supposedly avocado industry.
Right, and that's because they got all this money, like truckloads of money, that they want to use,
Hmm.
and they can just take whatever they want in Mexico. So, okay, we already have the drug fields. Let's take the avocado and coffee fields or whatever.
Hmm.
But we're going off on a tangent. So Pico is saying I'm going to be in New Jersey June 1st, Caesar's Hotel and Casino. So there must be some kind of thing happening.
Mm, cool.
Very cool. So, okay, so you know what Pico is. So then we'll go on to the next question. Can 380 be fired in a 9mm?
Yeah, I'm sure it can. Just like 40 can be fired in a 10 millimeter. But understand it's going to leave that ring inside your chamber that will probably make the next nine you load in freaking jam up in there because of the carbon ring that forms where the projectile and the case separate
Yeah, it's
if you
not like
shoot a higher
38 and
number of them.
357 that are head spaced off the rim because they're revolver cartridges, and the length of the cartridge really isn't a factor. So 357, as long as the gun can handle 357, it can also shoot 38, which is a shorter bullet in all the dimensions. 380 and 9mm headspace off of, what do the headspace off of? I guess it's uh, that's the case, duh. So they
Hmm.
had headspace off of the case length. So with a 9mm being a longer case length, the 380 with an automatic rim means there's no rim protruding the diameter of the case. The whole bullet can slide forward. So will it? Probably not, because they're really the same diameter, so it doesn't have an inclination to slide all the way forward, but it can. So technically, you could put a 380 into a 9mm. It could slide forward, and you could pull a firing pin or pull a trigger and hit the firing pin all day. It's never hitting the primer. In that case, the 380 would not fire. But I was going to say, if you point up, maybe, like, so if you point the gun up and the gravity holds the case down, then you'd probably be, but in reality, they're not slippery. So the 380 is probably going to just sit there and, like Tony said, shoot. But anyway, it's not designed to be. So you're the wrong headspace, and you're doing something that it's not like it's going to be in there crooked, but it's going to peel the copper part of the bullet off at the end of the case chamber, as opposed to just in the grooves from the rifling or whatever. So yeah, it's just not good for the gun, and I suspect it's dangerous. So can it? Yes. Like, it can happen. Should it be? I would say no. And, like, I wouldn't even do it in an emergency, unless the emergency was to, try to alert people in in an avalanche situation. You just need to make some noise or whatever. But I wouldn't think, that being said, I'm trying to remember in all the times of shooting, I'm pretty sure a couple of times we've shot a 380 out of a 9, but, and the only reason we know is because it would, stop the thing from cycling or whatever. But it was always an accident, and I can't remember it happening more than maybe once or twice, and I'm trying to remember if that was really a 380 or some other caliber mix match. There's some 9s that can get mix matched, or some other 9s that can get mix matched, right? Like some of the
9mm Largo, 9mm. Yeah.
yeah, I was just thinking there is some other short 9s, but yeah, you'd have to be shooting out of a can of old ammo. Like, that doesn't happen very often. All right, so that's that one. The next one is, how much is a Colt Trooper 357 Magnum worth now? So this person did put a name, and based on the name, that might be in another country. So they might just be asking the check question. But the answer is always, like, how the hell can anybody tell you what your gun is worth? That's like asking what my car, my motorcycle, or my guitar is worth. Like, an expert has to look at it to tell you. We can give you a general idea, I suppose. So a Colt Trooper 357, I would say you could look in like a blue book, which exists online, and or you can just actually, I got hiccups. You can actually get a blue book, big thick book with values of guns in it, and it'll give you the value based on its condition. So since a gun is, can be in good condition or it can be in bad condition or somewhere in between, there's valuations according to that. Or I guess one thing you can do is probably the most time productive way to do it is to take it to a gun show. But you could take it to, like, on a Saturday or something, or maybe on a Thursday would be a better day to do it. Take that gun to at least 5 different gun shops and ask each one of them how much it's worth. And I was saying that before. Like, if you ask 5 people and you get 4 answers that are pretty consistent, you know what the answer is, because there's no way they all colluded to give you the same wrong answer, right? So if you go to a gun show and walked around, now if you went to a gun show and asked 5 people, and then you went to 5 different gun shops, then the number at the gun show is going to be a different number than the gun shops. Like, but you'll get a consistent number. But the gun shops are going to give you maybe, I don't know what it is now, let's say 40% of the value, because they know they can sell it for 60% and they're content making a 20% cut, to hold that gun for a minute or two until the next buyer buys it. Person at a gun show is just a person, more than likely. So, they're probably going to charge a lot more. They're going to give you 40% and then, or less, right? And want, to sell it for
Well,
100.
yeah, they're not in the business of selling a volume of guns, so they're selling, their 3 Enfield 308s.
Yeah.
So they got a different price than somebody that has 12 of them, plus a whole bunch of other, surplus bolt actions. Yeah, all right, I can pump them out for less money because I have a buttload of them.
So Pico's saying it's worth 800 to 1,000 easy, and that would be, I'd say, a general thing, because you can, you find out, like, you take it to 5 different places, and they're gonna, 2 of them will tell you the price, and then the third one goes, oh, it would be the price, but look, if you look underneath the grip here, how it has this on here, those are rare. Or they'll look under the grip and go, see how it has this? That means it's one of the batches that nobody wants. Or they'll open it up and
Also,
go, oh, see how these are milled, or these are stamped parts? People really want the milled. So yours is worth this much, but you're probably only going to get this much.
and you throw on top of it, depends on which region. I mean, everybody knows here it's Jersey pricing. You know it's going to be more expensive because you're buying it in Jersey. So yeah, that $1,200 that it could be worth somewhere, let's say in Virginia where I'm from. Well, in Jersey they're going to charge more, or if the guy's selling it here because it's in Jersey.
Yeah, and the
It's
stupid
annoying.
laws and everything, it's already got
Hmm.
behind enemy lines. It's already got all its crap that it needs to. So there's going to be a charge for that. But that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. Like, I'm not saying it's justified, but if you were to buy that from somebody for $800 and get it to New Jersey, it might cost you another $400 in fees and
Well,
permits
it's
and
going to,
transfers and
yeah,
shit.
if you're going to go through an FFL, they charge a minimum, most of them, of $100 to the transfer and background check because they
And
want to make the money they lost.
you might run into somebody who goes, "Oh, I live in Tennessee. Sure, let me send that to you, but I can't find an FFL to send it to you, so I'm going to sell it to some guy in Kentucky."
Hmm.
I'm sure that happens more than anybody
Happens.
wants to talk about, because nobody talks about it. Nobody records that kind of shit. Should we keep doing it? It's weird doing
Sure.
it on a Sunday. I normally have something to do, but I don't have anything to do today. Then 4 more, if they're all real. Sometimes they're just a sentence or whatever. I don't read them ahead of time. So this next one is from this month already. So thanks everybody for your patience. Those last couple were from February. According to the manual, I guess I should be putting them in here so everybody can read these. There's like a limit of how many characters I can put in here, and some of these go longer. And that's why none of them, or not all of them, have been showing up. I'm going to try putting in half of it this time. Hopefully there's not a bunch of swears in here, because I did not read it.
Mm.
Wow, even half of it won't fit. So I'll just start reading. According to the manual, I need to use NATO ammo in my Canic MC9, or it will cause death or injury. I have been having multiple failure to feed issues using Blazer 115. Yet there are 115 grain. There are no YouTube videos and nothing on Canic's website. It's a 9mm like my Smith & Wesson, so I thought it was fine. No one in the gun shop where I bought it told me about NATO ammo. The new gun owner and frustrated. Everything online is change the spring, polish the ramp, nothing about NATO ammo. Thoughts? Okay,
NATO
so
ammo is 125, 124 grain. That's what you're looking for. That's what you put in because that's what the manufacturer told you to put in. Um, my
the
suggestion is put in.
Blazer
Go ahead.
using 115 is lighter, but I guess my question for you is all Blazer aluminum, or am I just thinking of only the one kind?
I think you. I mean, I'm assuming it's only the one kind. I don't buy. Is that Blazer?
Oh no, there is Blazer,
Yeah, I
but
think Blazer.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I just said they thought about that. Yeah, that's Blazer. So no, you don't only have to do that, but 124 grain is NATO spec.
okay.
So that's what you look for. 124 grain. Use what the manufacturer asks. Don't listen to these a-holes online that want you to change springs because your gun has to be dependable. And the manufacturer wrote in the book what's dependable. Use that.
So you've got your gun; it's a mechanism, and there's no batteries, there's no motors or anything, right? So
Mm.
you think about the cartridge. Let's start. You have to start somewhere. So we're going to start with the cartridge. A firing pin's going to come along. Cartridge is minding its own business. It gets jammed into a chamber. Firing pin comes along at some point, smacks its primer. The primer explodes. The priming powder explodes. The gunpowder burns. So that gunpowder burns. The gases that expel from the burning powder expand, and that pushes that pressure becomes greater than the force holding the lead and copper together. So that lead is pushed out of the cartridge, and now it's in the barrel in the chamber or whatever that's called, the forcing cone or something, and then it gets jammed into the threads, or not the threads, the
Lands
rifling.
and grooves.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and jammed down. It starts to turn as it goes down, and then as it leaves the barrel really fast, it is spinning because of those lands and grooves, and all that excess gas has somewhere to go, pops out behind the projectile, and that's what the noise we hear is the gas is expanding out of the barrel. So while all that's happening, equal and opposite reactions, Newton's forces of action or whatever they're called, you've got the gases and everything pushing in all directions. One of the directions is down the barrel. All the equal and opposite stuff happens pushing the stuff back. So one of the things that pushes back is the cartridge out of the chamber, and then once it falls out of the chamber, the cartridge is also pushing back the slide. So that slide is physically back however long it needs to be, so that that cartridge has a place to leave the ejection port, and then the springs are working against that and start to push that slide back forward as soon as the pressures stop pushing back. So now your slide is sliding forward with its springs, and it's going to scoop up the next round in the magazine, and you kind of get back to the same place we started, where the magazine hits the chamber, and then at some point the firing pin's going to come along. So the reason I explain all that is that that's like a little dance of mechanisms enough. Like that's all a little physics dance in there, the chemistry dance, because the powder makes a big difference. The force of that rearward energy is a factor of the projectile. So if the projectile is too light, little wimpy 9mm, such a narrow caliber that you got to worry about this stuff. If that projectile is too light, then it doesn't have it doesn't have enough force pushing backwards to battle the spring, which is trying to push the slide the other way. So it's just think of it as like a little delicate dance of machinery that happens, as we push the trigger or pull the trigger when I think about it. And that's where, you start to think about these as like numbers on a whiteboard, and you take that 145 or whatever Tony said for the weight of the 9mm is supposed to be by the manufacturer. 9mm NATO is shorthand for saying use medium-sized 9mm. Don't use the lightest weight 9mm and expect this gun to work. Don't use the heaviest 9mm and expect this gun to work, because the same thing, when you push a heavy bullet out, then those gases say, well, I could push this heavy bullet, or I could push this cartridge out. The cartridge is super easy, so I'm going to do that really fast and really first, and then the projectile will come out. Well, that's fast dwell, right? Quick dwell. Guns that push the projectile out and then the bolt, kind of backwards order, that's a long dwell. And that dwell is what we fight with AR-15s all the time. And that's what those people are telling you. Like, oh, they're essentially saying your cycle is happening too quickly. So if you polish the ramp, the next cartridge will come in faster, and therefore you'll get rid of your failure to feed. Or maybe if you adjust the spring a little bit, like cut 2 links out of the spring, now it's not going to pull as hard or push as hard, whatever you want to think. And now your little wimpy ammo can run, but like Tony's saying, you cut 2 links out of your spring, and I'm using good scattered examples,
Hmm.
links out of spring. But if somebody did that, then you put regular ammo back in it and it doesn't work again. So some people do fine tune, especially reloaders. They love to fine tune a gun so that it works, so they're just in harmony with their ammo, but then it has to work with that ammo or else it's not working. So I agree with Tony. Just shoot the ammo that the manufacturer asks for, and you'll find there's probably many, many, many options in that range, right? And if it says 140, I mean, I don't know what ammo comes in anymore, but if you can get 125 or something, that might be close enough. But your 114s or whatever, 115s were too light. But you might find a range that's closer to what the factory is asking for, that you don't have to be picky and only find one ammo. In other words, you're going to find a range of ammo. It's just that you're going to find what's common about them is that they're way closer to 150 grain than 100 grain.
Yeah. So yeah, NATO is a 124 grain. ZQI was the name of the Turkish company that was selling that through Walmart, and I used to buy a crap ton of it. And then for some reason, they stopped importing for a while, and then they came back. I don't know if like Walmart, did the Walmart thing and gave them like a big honking initial price and they bought into it and then realized it was a Walmart trap. They get you to produce so much that you're beholden to Walmart now, because so much of your business is coming from that price they gave you that you thought was a good idea. And now you're realizing you're trapped for making it only for Walmart. Oh, anyway, I just know I used to buy it there, ZQI 124 grain, and it worked really well. And it had a whole bunch of pop in it, because it's like a hot round. NATO rounds, 124 NATO is a hot round. That's why they have it set up to work on those Turkish pistols because they're part of NATO. We have those 115 that used to be what we had here, when we first adopted the Beretta.
I think that's interesting. And 9mm is a caliber that is affected by this too. I think 308, 556, 50,
Uh-huh.
50, but anything that has full autos and bolt actions. Well, is there bolt action nines? I guess there's not bolt action nines, but if they've got semi-autos and full autos, a lot of times the full autos are cooked different. Like they're going to make them either they're going to dumb them down because they know they're shooting them out like a flood and they just don't need to waste all that resources. They're going to make little tiny bullets and less ammo, or they're going to go the other way and say, this thing's got to shoot the whole full auto, or it's got to make the whole full auto thing happen, and it has to happen. There can't be anything weak, so we're going to tune this up to the top of the spectrum instead of the middle of the spectrum. And a lot of times we would find like 30-06 ammo at the surplus store. If you bought it in a belt, well, it's probably made for a machine gun if it's buying in a belt, and you put that in your bolt action, and that's a little bit different than shooting just some factory loaded 30-06. Definitely noticed it in the 50s because some of them are meant to shoot most of them are meant to shoot a machine gun, but sometimes it's like in an airplane wing, and they don't want to worry about like a misfeed in an airplane wing if they can help it.
Yeah, there's a reason certain ammos exist.
Pico saying you're in Arizona. I picked up an Arasaka Sportage, real nice for $100. Could tell it's been rechambered because I have two other originals and I see the hole slightly bigger. That's neat. I've never had a sporterized Arasaka, but for $100 I would totally buy it. I like Arasakas a lot, but I didn't like having to buy Arasaka ammo because I don't even know if I ever even found any. I'm thinking I owned an Arasaka for a while. Bought the bayonet, and then at an auction, I think that's how it went down. I bought the bayonet at an auction, and then I had a bayonet sitting there without a gun, or did I buy them together? I might have bought them together. I don't want to tell you what I paid because everybody will get mad. It wasn't even $50, I don't think. And it wasn't the best Arasaka. I mean, Arasakas, can be really bad. This was not a good Arasaka, and I don't even think it had all its parts, but it was enough to hold the bayonet up. It was like the right gun underneath the bayonet. Anyway, then I eventually was like, I almost went bankrupt here for a bit. So when I was just starting to really get bad financially, I sold a bunch of my stuff to gun channels people, and that kept me going for a little while, but I did get rid of it. And I got a fair price for it. I forgot who bought it now. It was a couple of guys from gun channels. Probably one of those guys bought it. But I didn't own it very long. I only owned it for like a year and maybe a little bit longer, but I never even thought about shooting it. And I never got a bullet for it is what I was thinking. And that's weird because I guess I just never had time when I owned it to take a picture of it with its ammo. I know I took a couple of pictures of the bayonet, but it's not an AK bayonet, so it wasn't like my thing. I just knew that it was kind of a rare bayonet. But the bayonet itself is worth good money. But anyway, getting an Arasaka in a standard caliber would be super cool, actually, being able to shoot it. I don't think I've really seen too many of those because I don't think I've seen sporterized other kind of guns, but not a sporterized Arasaka. But I suspect it could be because of the quality of the Arasaka. People didn't want to bother rechambering it. I don't know. Have you ever played with Arasakas?
No, I haven't. That's one of those. I'm like, huh? Because Arasakas were in 7.5 and 6 something. There were two different calibers of Arasakas.
Right. Because there was more than one gun. We say Arasaka, but he made like a
Yeah.
different.
Oh, yeah.
And then there
Yeah,
was carbon
definitely.
full length ones and stuff. But the wood they're made out of. Like, have you ever fiddled with one? Like, they're made out of a
Mm-mm.
wood that I don't know. I mean, somebody probably knows what the name of the wood is, but it's a very lightweight wood. It's not that it's balsa wood. It's not like it's poor quality wood. It's just a very lightweight wood. So when you pick it up, most of that era guns, bolt action guns, you pick them up and they're pretty heavy. You pick up an Arisaka and you're like, what is this, a parade gun? Or like, is this made out of balsa wood? I mean, it really feels like a balsa wood or like a bamboo or something. Once you're holding it, you can tell it's wood. It's not bending. It's not brittle. It's still strong wood. It's just that it's much lighter. And then I guess it also depends on what year you got it. The first ones, they probably put some time and effort into them, but by the end of the war, they were just like really going fast and using as few
Mm-hmm.
resources as possible. So they're very crude, but that's sort of the awesomeness of them. But anyway, because of that, I suspect a lot of people didn't bother to sporterize them. And also, they would cut them in half. A lot of people got them home in their duffel bags, and I forgot what the deal was. It was either they could have it as long as it was in their duffel bag, or they weren't supposed to have it. But if they shoved it in the duffel bag, who knew? Like, I don't know where the line falls there, because it probably depends on units and stuff. But a lot of them, they would call it the duffel bag mod, and they would take off this one ring and cut the wood, and then they would, I forget if they cut the wood a second time, but anyway, you could cut the wood at one place at least, and then kind of take it down and shove it into a duffel bag, and then you could get it home and then put it back together, and it wouldn't look, unless you took it apart, like no one would know that it was cut, and it was just the wood that was cut. I don't think they cut the barrel. But because it's such a long gun, it's like one of those guns that's made in the era of, like, when your gun stops working, we give you a bayonet because now it's a pike. Like, you keep fighting,
Yeah.
like you run out of ammo, now it's a pike. So it's it's a long gun. But anyway, super cool. And I would like to shoot one. They're a little sketchy, so maybe I chamber it into a lower caliber, like maybe 308 or something. If that's even lower, I guess I'm not a ballistics enough to know. But I'd want it to go down to something that's like 38 special or something, like something I do not have to worry about. Do you know where I can take it where they can tell me what caliber it is? Oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't read that part of the question. So I think I want to say every gun shop, but I shouldn't say every gun shop. A gun shop with a gunsmith for sure, probably, or I should say is probably the best likely. But what they do is they just pour lead in there. So they'll melt some lead and they'll pour some lead in there. It'll fill the cavity or fill the chamber, and then they pull that out, that slug of lead, and they just
Uh-huh.
measure, and it's the measurement of whatever the caliber is. So I mean, you could do it with wax or something if you just felt like doing it. You put some Kleenex in there or something, and then pour some wax in there, and then once it's cold, pull it out of there, and you can just measure it with a micrometer. But you'll essentially get a cast of the cartridge. You won't get a bullet, but you know what I mean. You'll get the case. I wonder what, like you say, there's 7 something millimeters, so I have no idea. I'm sure it's something like 30 caliber, but it could be something like a 240 Savage or something, right? Like, I'm not sure what a similar caliber might be.
Yeah, I just know they were almost a medium, an intermediate caliber, the smaller one. From what I read, because I have never shot an Arisaka, but I've read about them. The guys that were talking about shooting them during the war had a very little kick, were accurate for what they were. Because people don't talk, they know we had a 30-06 cartridge that was pretty much designed to drop people out at like 600 yards, easy. And I mean, even looking at the sights on those guns, it's like, yeah, 1,000 meters, over 1,000 meters. That ain't happening. That was not going to happen. But it was a very powerful cartridge. Arisaka was made for flatter shooting, closer range, and I think it makes great sense that you had that. I mean, we stayed stupid for a very long time until we came up with the intermediate caliber with the AR. I mean, excuse me, M16. We knew, the Russians knew by 1944 when they built the SKS round. What was it called? The M43, I think. But the ammo for the SKS, they knew we needed an intermediate round. Germany knew, and we held on to the BS for a really long time. We had them adopt the 7.62 by 51 NATO, even though we knew we needed an intermediate round. And then when they agreed to it, we still blew that agreement off and came up with the 5.56.
There's a bunch of questions happening, but you made some good points that I'm going to try to not go on tangent. So G23 said they sell a slug kit that you can do it yourself. So,
Oh, okay.
and I wonder, is it lead or is it wax or something? Because nowadays they could do it with, any number of materials, I'm sure. It just needs to fill the cavity and then come out, right? Not stick in there. Because I
Yeah,
know some
all I
people,
know is called yeah, they call it sluggy the barrel. I didn't know what they used, but yeah,
shops will do lead,
sluggy.
but they've got shit laying around to do lead.
Hmm.
Oh, I know a gunsmith close to me, and he told me to take it to Arizona. Oh, interesting. Maybe we just got more uh, time on the clock than Arizona. I could definitely see California gunsmiths being more CCW ish or hunting ish. You know what I mean? Just so they don't have as much stuff thrown at them. Like in Arizona, I'll bet you gunsmiths get a lot of stuff thrown at them. They get real, you know what I mean? Like they probably get a lot of time on the clock with stuff. But I don't know why they would tell you to take it to Arizona otherwise. I mean, we do have some good gunsmiths. You're in, I don't know where you're in. So like if you're coming across to Phoenix or if you're coming across to someplace else, but more than likely you're coming across to Phoenix, I would say there's a place called AZ Guns. Not Cheryl Todd's Arizona Firearms, but AZ Guns is a machine gun guy who you'll know if you find the right Instagram account because he has like a Humvee with all the accessories and a turret and everything. And he goes to the machine gun shoots all the time. He's a fixture at the machine gun shoots, and he has a lot of belt fed stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the kind of gunsmith, that's the kind of dude who could look at your gun and tell you with with his eyeballs what was done to it and when, maybe even who did it, kind of thing. Like he's definitely a gun guy. G23 is saying, aren't they made in 7.7? Yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
There's a
There you go.
couple.
Yeah, 7.7. And then there's another one. I forgot what it was.
But then Pops Pico was saying, I have three Arisakas. One's all original in the small caliber, got it for 100. The other is a Type 99, found it for 30 at a yard sale. Guy thought it was a prop for a movie. And that's the thing is they don't necessarily feel like real guns. And because they're so, I'm going to say crude, because I'm sure that Japanese manufacturers know how to build really nice guns. And I'm sure the nice ones are nice. But the like one I had, looked like somebody was doing it in a hut, like like with a rock as a hammer. Like it definitely did not in any way sense or whatever. And the parts were only like approximate, like it was definitely crude. But that's the thing, like they were making them just fast as they could, as they were losing a war, right? So I mean, it's totally understandable, and that's part of their. I don't want to say charm. It's just part of the gun, right? But the thing is when people didn't think about all that and it wasn't like we didn't have the internet to just know that stuff, when you look at a pile of guns and this is in there, you're like, what is this? Is this a fake gun? Like, what is this? This doesn't look like a real gun. This looks like, oh, you know what else it looks like? It looks like you'd, not necessarily for parades, but what you would give a kid, like a conscript or like your first year military person who's drafted, to teach them how to drill. Like you would give it to them and just, it can hold a bayonet and it can make the noises. You can do inspections with it, but you don't have to worry about shooting it because it doesn't hold guns or it doesn't hold bullets. And there's been those kind of guns throughout history, and it kind of looks like that sometimes if you get a crude one. But anyway, that's a lot about Arisakas. The neat part about them is they were made to shoot at airplanes. So right off the bat, I think it's all of them, maybe just the 99s. But the one I had, most of the ones I've seen have the air if they have it, because they also have them without it, where it's been lost or removed or something. But they have a
Hmm.
pretty complicated rear sight that allows you to like lead an airplane so that they could do a little bit of math and like actually have a chance of hitting an airplane instead of just shooting up in the air, which was pretty neat because nobody else bothered to put all that complicated equipment on the back of a rifle. But again, they're made on an island to shoot planes that are coming at islands, so totally different type of fighting than any place else. I'm guessing the planes were a much bigger issue on the islands than in Europe, I guess. Did they even have airplane sights on any of the German guns except for anti-aircraft guns? I'm trying to think. Like I don't think I've ever seen a German or any other gun really with an anti-aircraft rear sight.
Yeah, that was, I think, something unique to the Arisakas. Um, and it was out for a while, so I have no idea why. I mean, Understand they kicked these off at the start of the war when they had air dominance wherever they went. Like there was not much of an air battle in China pre World War II. Excuse me, pre December 41.
Hmm. Hmm.
There wasn't a great Korean Air Force that the Japanese fought. There wasn't a huge Chinese Air Force. I mean, hell, we barely got the Flying Tigers over there before freaking December. I don't even know if they were there when Pearl Harbor happened. Like they were still coming in country. They definitely weren't flying. They didn't fly the first. We didn't have really Americans in airplanes over there until 42.
I thought that the Flying Tigers were between the wars more. Like I thought they were way before Pearl Harbor. They were after Pearl Harbor.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
They were trying to filter in before Pearl Harbor, but remember, you had to get 100 pilots from America, sneak them into Asia, plus the planes, plus the personnel to fix the planes. So it took longer than them just founding the Flying Tigers and people jumping on the plane and just getting off. They had fake IDs. They came in by ship. They came in through India. They came in through different ways. So it took a while to build it up. Then they had to put it together. Then they had to test fly them. So yeah, no, Flying Tigers didn't take to the air before December. I think. I know it was a close thing. It wasn't something that was just there and they were doing it the whole time.
One of the first people I chatted with online back in the early 2000s when we had forums still was a guy that was, we weren't in the war with Europe yet. And
Hmm.
he was, this was, I forget what years that would be, whatever, 40s, I guess. But you didn't need to get a pilot's license back then. You just needed to know how to fly. And then something
Hmm.
airplane and you could just fly. There was no licenses for anything. Like you could just drive a car if you got in a car. There was, not licenses yet. So anyway, this, at least that's how it was described to me. So when he was young, I think he was, I can't remember anymore. So I'm trying to think back. He was either 16 or 14, but he was something where he was probably too young to join the military anyway. But it wasn't an issue because our military wasn't fighting yet. We weren't in the war yet. So he went to Canada, became a fighter pilot, and then fought against Germany as a fighter pilot for Canada for a number of years before the Americans were even in the war. And
Hmm.
that guy's stories were pretty crazy, pretty interesting. Not so much crazy, but just super interesting. But yeah, I never thought about it. But that would have been kind of the same. No, that would have been earlier. So maybe that's why I thought the Flying Tigers were that era.
Yeah, so there were people going into different places. We had pilots coming from America going to Ethiopia fight the Italians pre World War II.
Yeah, because you could be a mercenary. You could go fight. You just couldn't fight with a U.S. uniform on. And then people would just like
Hmm.
ditch out and go do that. I guess not everybody, but a number of people did that. But there's a bunch of people that hated fascists even back then, right? Because that was the fight, fascists against
Yep.
non-fascists. I guess.
Yeah, and the crazy part, there were people that went and fought with the communist faction just to fight fascists, not because they were diehard communists. So they got involved in a war. The war breaks out. They have fighter experience, a flying experience, combat experience. They come back to America, fight for America against the Germans, and bring them in as leaders and instructors. And then all of a sudden, the Red Scare happens in the 50s, and they go, "Hey, you fought with communists prior to World War II. So that makes you a commie and you're dangerous." And they're like, "That was 15 years ago. I was 22, and you didn't have a problem with me leading America through the war. But now politics has you telling me I'm a communist because I did something in 1938. Get the F out of here." And that's the hysterica that took America. And a lot of people lost a lot of stuff during that time.
No, there was folks that couldn't fly for the United States, so they'd also go fly for Canada and other countries because they didn't give a shit.
Hmm.
The deal was like, you
Yep.
want to fly? Let's go give you a plane.
And some of the black pilots that were actually became Tuskegee Airmen and helped train that, they actually fought in other countries. I know there was definitely one that fought in Ethiopia, and I know there were some that fought in England and some that fought for the Canadians. Same things like they had American blacks, they actually fought for the French because they had the black units, and that's in World War I and World War II. prior to America's entrance into the war.
I haven't heard anything about that, I guess. Or at least I don't recall anything. Was that those weren't integrated then? Those were like segregated
Mm-mm.
units in
They
France?
were, yeah, separate. They had black units in France that were French, but they were Americans.
That's
Senegal,
interesting.
they had them as
French has
Senegalese
always
units.
had, what would you call that? Like the French Foreign Legion has always been like that aspect of the French military where they are willing to, what's the word, like use folks who are willing to do military stuff, but like for France usually, but like, also for other things that help France. So anyway, they've always had that like aspect of French military where they're like, we don't give a shit, like go over here. Or they would take convicts and shit too, I guess. But like anybody who was just like had a death wish or just wanted to kill people or whatever, go into the Foreign Legion and we'll use you.
Yeah, well, they had to have them the freaking work all those colonies all over Hell's Creation.
Let's see. So then the next one, I think I've got all the questions in real life. We always default to real life questions, so thanks to Pico and others, G23, for throwing out some real questions and real answers and stuff. But we'll keep digging in. The next one is from this month. Not everybody leaves a name, and I don't usually say the names even if you do. So this one says, I have a Ruger GP100, excellent condition with, it says 000, 4 zeros and a 1. So 0001 serial number. How much value does that add to it? That's weird. I mean, I guess it's possible to have one with a 001, but usually the factories keep the first ones. It's unusual to see anything under a 5 usually. I would say it has to add value, but to whom for a GP100?
Mhm.
I'm glad it's in excellent condition and nobody like didn't pay attention and just started shooting it. With a 1 serial number, I doubt it would matter if it's in excellent condition, because I think a collector wouldn't care because they'd want the 1 serial number, right, in any condition. And they might think that even if it was in some condition, like used condition, they might think it was used at the factory for testing or something, like with a serial number of 1. So I just have no idea. And I'm not an expert on Ruger, so I don't know. Some companies will do serial number like TST1 through 100 for all their testing guns. So the first official serial number is 001, but there's already been like 100 other guns before that. I have no idea how Ruger does that. But what do you think? A 100 with a
Yeah,
001.
you'd have to look it up. And again, when you when you're selling a firearm, the more people you can appeal to, the better. But when you get something that's like that, look, if I'm scrolling through guns.com or wherever people go to buy, used firearms online, I'm looking at the prices if I'm not a collector and I just want a GP 100. I'm looking at the prices, and if you have one that's a 0001, I don't care because I'm looking for something I want to shoot. So that price could be too high for me, whatever it fetches, because the person that will pay the higher price is the collector, and there aren't that many.
That's a great point. It's going to price itself out of a population of buyers.
Yeah, it's like buying a house with a pool. Excuse me, selling a house with a pool.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly.
Anybody who wants a house with a pool is looking, but most people go, yeah, I don't want that maintenance. I don't want that problem. So you just cut down on the number of people that are wanting to buy your house for the price that you're probably set. Now, if you drop that price, I'll probably buy it because I just want a GP 100. But guess what? That pristine new in box condition, if I get it, it's gone. It's getting shot.
I think they were talking about this last night on Hillbilly's show, talking about used guns and they were talking mil spec in that case, but it applies here. And that's what happens is same thing with mil spec is somebody will buy something, cherish it as a rare specimen and, hold it up and it's their safe queen or whatever. Like this one is the one I don't
Mhm.
shoot. And then they die or they pass it on or something. And then the next person is like, I don't value it that way. And then they use it or house fire happens. And even if they did value it, even more so, house fire happens and now it's destroyed. Flood happens. here in Arizona, we get floods more often than we get house fires because a pipe will break and it'll, flood out a person's house when they're at work or something, and they come home and the bottom of all their guns are destroyed. Sometimes you can swap out a stock, right? But sometimes that 1911 was saying on the floor of your safe for some reason, and now it's gone. So, with same thing with this kind of like what Tony was saying, like you'll find that less and less of these guns exist, so that value will skyrocket at some point. But to who? Like, you have to find that buyer. But yeah, I think the low serial number, the completely unique. I mean, if not said some shorthand for something I'm missing, like meaning single digit serial number or something,
Hmm.
that makes more sense. Like finding a 7. Yeah, I've seen lots of 7 guns before. I've seen lots of 9s and stuff, like just the, single digits, but over 5. When I see them that are under 5, they're usually like at a museum or like in a book or something. So I would say it's probably worth something, but then I don't know how it works with like investing for this level of stuff. Like first off, GP 100. I don't know how many people are even interested in that gun. So the first one of a gun that nobody cares about is still, it's the first of, but it's a gun that nobody cares about. I don't know that a GP 100 is. It's definitely not the most popular gun. I'm not going to say nobody cares about it, but you know what I mean? Like on the spectrum of guns, I don't think it's top 100 of all guns, like that people would just generally care about.
Yeah.
So maybe like a
Look.
Ruger museum or something, like a very, very small slice of people are going to value that thing for its serial number. But man, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for a Ruger collector, or maybe somebody that's just buying their first, like, hey, I'm going to collect firearms, and they don't know exactly what they're going to get into. Yeah, you might get that person. But is there really? I mean, Ruger doesn't have the pedigree or prestige, excuse me, as Smith. Yeah, if you have a Smith and Wesson something something with a 0001 or a Colt, totally different attitude, totally different way to look at things.
Yeah, like
But
the
as a Ruger,
like the what is it? The first J frame with serial number 101 or 001. Like, yeah, that's like
mhm,
epic. Like that, museums would punch each other in the nose to have. The GP 100, which might be the first of that second double action Ruger's model or whatever. Yeah, you're still going to have to find a museum that cares enough about Ruger or single action, double actions, or something. Um, but that being said, I would think I was getting at. I don't know how it works for investment. Where would a bunch of people go in on that, like with some sort of a fund or something, and then put it in a museum, and then just have the value insured or something, so that there's this investment and it's kept in a museum, but it'll just continue to grow in value, so therefore it's worth investing in. Like, I don't know how often that happens, or if that happens with guns, or if that's even a thing. But that's the only thing I could think of, is if it's somehow like if there's some strategy to like sell it to an investment, like if it was a fancy baseball card or like a fancy Pokemon card. 100 people will buy it together and it'll like just exist somewhere, and then all those people own 100th of the value. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if that kind of stuff happens with guns, but maybe if some of the auction houses work together with investment firms or something. Actually, that'd be kind of neat, right? Have like where's those salt mines that they turned into like secure storage, and you just own a chunk
mhm.
of secure storage somewhere that doesn't corrode the guns, and you just keep buying super fancy investment guns and either keeping them in your safe or putting them in museums, and then just insuring them so that they can't lose value. I mean, once it's insured for $1 million, it's never going to be, if the place burns down, you get your $1 million, so it's always worth $1 million. So I'm wondering if there's some space for that in the future of guns.
Hey, look, I look at firearms like I look at comic books back in the day. Dude, if you're not buying them to enjoy them, there's no guarantee they're ever going to make the money back. You know what I mean? As an investment.
Because there won't be a next generation of appreciation. There'll only be a next level of value of an investment. And that's never going to be on something like a comic book, right? It's the ink and the paper are never going to be worth is it intrinsic value of the being the comic? And if you don't
Hmm.
let that go to the next generation, then yeah, what do they care about the ink and the paper. At some point, it just becomes ink and paper, not what's written on it or why it's written on there or when or anything.
Yeah, it only counts when somebody actually puts value to it. Like the first Spider-Man didn't mean a damn thing until somebody sold him at auction finally. In the what 80s and 90s, and then it was a big story, and then all of a sudden the comic book industry lost their damn mind and started producing number ones of any damn thing. They'd start new comic book streams just so they could get money and have people rush out and buy them because they wanted that first one. They wanted the Punisher War Journal 2099 number one. Well, that crap is not. I mean, toilet paper maintains its value more than that comic book did.
Mike White makes a great point. Talk to Ruger and go from there. I mean, if anybody was going to put value on a serial number one, it could be Ruger.
Hmm.
Especially if
Yeah,
that was
right.
like accidentally or through some other president or something. I don't know how Ruger works, but I don't think it's a family company anymore. But even if it was, like if some sister or brother sold that thing from the company and the current brother or sister that owns it, however the situation is, they might value that more than anybody, actually. That's a great point. They're still in business and they still
Yeah,
make it.
smart. Didn't think about that.
Yeah, I didn't either. It's obvious. Hillbillies out there, welcome everybody that's joining in. Let's see. Pico said, I seen a 1961 Ford Falcon station wagon. I guess that was serial number one. That's interesting. And I bet you the same thing with cars, right? Like, because
Hmm.
I don't know. I haven't really watched it in a while. When we had cable and I had roommates, I've seen that auction that is up in Phoenix. There's like a big fancy car auction. So I know
Hmm.
that happens every year. And, I'll see it on the internet or something once in a while, but I don't sit there and watch it. But, people refer to it like, oh, did you see this Mustang sold for this much money or whatever? And that's the same kind of thing. Like some people are buying these cars and they've got a giant garage or whatever building to put all these cars in and they just sit them there and they tow them everywhere and they never get miles on them. But I think probably most of the people buying the cars at these things are driving it home. Right? Like they bought it so they have a cool car to drive around on the weekends. And they're not looking at mileage so much. So it's going to be the rare person that wants to buy the Ford Falcon that has 0 miles on it, right? Like having serial number one is one thing, but having 0 miles on it, like that's the kind of I think the same kind of thing with
Yeah.
cars. Like to have the ones that
Hmm.
can afford to have a car with 0 miles on it, that means you're just looking at that car. Like you got to have a lot of money just to sit there looking at a car. This was an easy one if we know the answer. The next question is a P-38 slide stamped? So first I got to figure out what a P-38 is, because I'm thinking Nazi gun from World War
Walter.
II probably isn't
Yep.
that, right? Or is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe there's like a SIG P-38 or something. So
I don't
in
think
that
it would
case,
be stamped,
no, they didn't stamp nothing. I shouldn't say that. The Germans did stamp a few things, but if they had an
but later
opportunity
on.
to stamp and mill, they're milling. Like they do not, their goal wasn't to make things easier.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the original P-38, but I know post-German war, I mean, they didn't call them P-38s anymore. I think they called them P-1s, and they were aluminum framed. But yeah, if we go on with the first ones, I seriously doubt they were stamped.
The internet's not working. P-38 has the, I think I know which one this is. I used to
Hmm.
know all these things off the top of my head. I'm not that disappointed that I don't know a P-38 off the top of my head anymore. The internet's not working. But it's a 9, right? And it's
Hmm.
polymer handle or grip. Were they an M1 after the war?
They were P-1s. They were
Okay.
called P-1s. Then they were also called P-4s,
Yeah, my
German
internet's.
military or police designation back in the day.
Oh, okay. But as far as being stamped now, I can't imagine them stamping that. I mean, it's possible that they took a bar and then stamped it and then drilled holes in it. But I mean, I know that that's different, right? Like, as if you think of metal like wood, it's going to have a grain to it. And depending on how you make the metal, so if we're talking like a metal rod, depending on how you make that metal rod, the grain inside of it's going to would be aligned differently. So if you think of like cutting a tree in half and it's going to have those rings, when you make a metal rod, it might have rings like that, but you might make a metal rod out of a sheet cake and you kind of carve it out of there. It's going to have rings that are different. So I think that the only way they could have stamped that would be to take like a metal bar and smash it into a big piece of machine that would like, physically mold it into those shapes by stamping it, like smushing it. But the machinery to do that would be massive. And I don't think that's as strong a piece as if you take a bar and you carve away the parts that you don't want instead of smushing them. Because I think that smush turns into like a same issue as Damascus, right? It like starts to make the metal less strong. I think they're trying to keep it as strength. They're worried about the end result rather than the production method. At least the Germans. But I can't figure. I don't know. So we
Listen, I just freaking speed read the Wikipedia entrance, and they were like, yeah, the first wooden grips, because these things are produced from 1939 till 1940s. Um, the first grips were actually wood carved. I'm like, yeah, no one carving wood grips gonna have a freaking stamped. You're not stamping something then putting wooden grips on, carved wood grips on. So no, it is what it is.
All right. Then our last question is: I just got a PA-10 chambered in 308. Looking to buy a scope. I'm gonna open the question up. I mostly want to use it for fun and hunting whitetail. I live in Michigan and go to the range quite a bit. I want a relatively cheap scope, under $500, and want it to do a little bit of everything. No clue what to get and would love some help. All right. So PA-10 and 308 is a rifle, but it's not like a scope killer, right? It's just a 308. So
Mm-mm.
bolt action. My internet's
All
not
right. So
working.
what was? Yeah. So it's a AR-10. Um, what?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's an AR-10 from Palmetto State Armory. What did they say they wanted? Like, what is the strength of the optic they were looking for, or did they say?
That's I guess probably really the question. It says they mostly want to use it for hunting whitetail in Michigan and going to the range under $500. Um, so yeah, I would say a variable 4 to 20 or something. I don't know if that's too big, but 4 to something, 4 to 10. Those are
Well,
fun.
all right. Well, what you need to do is carry yourself over to Primary Arms and look at the Primary Arms optics they have over there. They have some second focal plane scopes that run around $300-400, and they make good optics. Also, if you want to check out Gideon Optics, they're another one that gives you good stuff in that price range. And Swamp Fox, because you're dealing with a value price firearm, and those are three companies that give you value priced optics. About the and you have multiple options in the up to $500 range. Right now, I just hit Primary Arms, and I'm seeing a lot of. I mean, I got a 3 to 18 Primary Arms first focal plane optic with illuminated reticle for $499.99, and that's from their SLX line, which is silver, which is I think the middle. I think it's the middle because they have platinum series, gold series, and silver series. All right, silver is the bottom. So platinum, gold, and silver. So it's PLX, GLX, and SLX. So yeah, check out Swamp Fox, Gideon, and Primary Arms.
Right on. Hillbilly saying a 3 to 9 second focal plane is a good all around deer hunting scope. So first focal plane, second focal plane is essentially where the reticles are on the scope, and if you're going to zoom in on a variable optic or a variable magnification, I guess, um, either one of two things are going to happen. The crosshairs are going to shrink and stay kind of relative to the glass, I guess the way to say it, or like you're
Hmm.
going to see the reticle shrink, or the reticle will stay the same and everything will just zoom in behind it. And neither one is perfect, and one is, what do you call it, like preferred by some people rather than the other. But the second focal point, what is that one? I know that there's a difference, but it takes me, I'm not off the top of my head. I'd have to think about which one.
When you zoom in on the second focal plane, the reticle itself gets bigger too.
Okay.
So you
So
have
now
pretty
you
much
zoom
pick.
into like the maximum distance of your scope and your rifle, you can still see the crosshairs, and they're not like tiny
Mhm.
or so zoomed in that you can't see what's going on.
Addable is a fourth one. So reason being, there's some of the people we have discount codes on our affiliate page. So it's Addable, Gideon, Primary Arms, and Swamp Fox. That's four different companies that give you such good around $500 optics that you should be able to find between the four of them. You should be able to find something, actually multiples, and then feel like you have a choice, not that you're forced to, buy the cheapest of anything. And Audible has some stuff that's like out of box or, show or floor samples of stuff. So you're going to get something, but it might have like, a little scratched up from being handled or came out of the box. Because right now, what is this? Damaged box open demo, a 1 to 12 by 32 first focal plane plumb reticle for 623, normally $1,000. So that's a 1 to 12, and that'll work on any 308 gun, with that optic, with that reticle. Now it's a little over what you want, but it's a it's a good deal for what it is. But man, is that a complicated reticle the some bitch has.
Mike White is saying he likes the versatility of the LPVO.
Yep, that's what this is. The 1 to 12 is the LPVO. Um, yeah, there's versatility to it. I have one. I have a Hawk Optic 1 to 8, and I'm just learning it. I'm learning optics. I usually shoot iron sights, or if I'm taking training, I have a red dot.
I liked red dots for a while, but I'd rather do iron or straight to optic, straight to, you know,
Hmm.
uh,
A
an
scope.
optical scope. Yeah, optical scope, I should say, rather than just because a red dot is really not optical. It is an optic, I guess, but I think technically most of them don't magnify anything. They just create a plane that you could put a red dot on.
Hmm.
I think a couple of them tried to magnify and it freaked everybody out, so they just went away from magnification. But
Yeah,
some of your rifles
you
can
can
do
have.
magnification, or like one, right? Like one is zero, or one is just equal like to nothing. So um, so anyway, looking through some nice uh, optics is the same as looking through a red dot. Essentially, you get a red dot in the middle of your zero magnification. And if it's a clear optic and it's a big enough tube, then big enough diameter tube, then it is effectively just a really big red dot. But when you're looking down it, who cares how long it is, right? Like it's still effective on an AR or something. But on a 308, like you're probably not using that as a battle rifle, right? Or if you are using it as a battle rifle, it's a battle rifle, not a CQB rifle. So my theories or my thoughts are always thinking of like maybe a way smaller 5.56 rifle that you're going to be whipping around and shooting close distances and far distances. 308, I tend to think of far distance specifically, or like only, or mostly, I should say. You can never say only. What's LP? I got the variable optic, low power variable optic. So like 3 to 9 as opposed to like 1 to 40 or something. So the
Yeah,
first number is the magnification. The second number is the distance, or something like that, like the amount of light or something. Like it has some other number. It's like a number of millimeters
like
or
I,
something.
yeah, I have a 1 to 8 by 28, maybe. So 1 to 8, that's the magnification. One, two,
Yeah,
three, four, five, six,
it's a
seven,
variable. It can be 1, it can be 2, it can be all the way up to 8.
eight.
And then
Uh-huh.
by 20,
is
which is
is
like the diameter of the tube.
yep,
And that's how much light
diameter of
is
two.
coming in, how much you got to like squint or like look into the tube versus just hold your eyes open. And then, some
Well, no,
optics,
it's
eyes open and
actually
just see.
size of the rings that you'll need to mount it to your rifle.
Oh, okay. Well, there's
Yes.
size of the rings, and then there's the size of the, what do you call it, the lenses, because the lenses
Yeah,
get way bigger.
the objective lens. Yeah.
Because it's all about, they'll cross the, it flips from upside down to right side up, and it does that in a pinpoint. So they do that over the rings, and they can make even a big ass honking scope go down to a 1-inch ring with that, I guess, using those prisms or whatever. But anyway, so there's a range. Like, that's probably why they're asking the question, right? Like, there's a ton of options for that particular scenario. Running a 308, which, in other words, you don't have to have a massively expensive or heavy duty optic, and you probably can't run a tiny little one like an air gun optic or something, or a BB gun optic, but or even like a 22 optic. You'd want to put something on there that's made for rifles, but the range there, the spectrum is huge, even with a $500 price point these days. I think the big question would be standard or variable. Is there any argument for standard anymore for non-variable optics?
Well,
I mean,
when you
20
when you look
years
at
ago, they were shitty variable optics. So like the con was like,
yeah,
they're shitty, they're going to fall apart on you. Like, that doesn't happen so
hmm
much.
yeah, the 3 to 9 bush now that you can buy at Walmart. But now we're totally different. We have a lot. Again, I named off 4 companies that get you into what we could only dream of back in the day. Back in no more than 10 years ago, we didn't think there would be $500 optics with the choices we have now. He said he once was it looking to buy a scope to use for fun and hunting whitetail. The variable optic gets you there because if you shoot pretty much any distance between the 1 to 8 for hunting, you should be able to be fine. It's just picking out what reticle design you would use or which you want most of all. And if you still go with a traditional like 3 to 9, 4 to 12, you can still mount a red dot on top of that optic and use your hunting optic for hunting stuff. But then if you want to go to the range, you still got that little red dot sitting on top of it. You just move your cheek well to a chin well, and you can still run close up, pow, 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 and then drop your eye back down to the 3x or 4x, optic. And that's what the Marine Corps ran. Marine Corps ran 4x optic on their regular infantry rifle. So you're fine with that too. Again, you're using the freaking 762 by 51 or a 308. Even having fun at the range, you can probably still use that 3x and you don't need a red dot. But it gives you optics. I mean options. It's fun. It's fun buying stuff for guns.
I like the varials because sometimes I'm just interested in seeing, zooming it out all the way, seeing the target as small as possible, and I guess shooting for a scenario where you'd want to have the greatest amount uh, of visibility, I guess, downrange. So, a bad situation, people are running around, stuff's happening. You're not zooming in and shooting headshots with like some cartoon or something or some movie. Like, you're in reality, you're going to be zoomed out so that you can see what's going on, so that you're not about to do something when somebody's running into the path of what you're about to do, right? So I do like to shoot that way, but every once in a while I do like to zoom in all the way. Now, when you're hunting, totally different situation, right? And when you're hunting, yeah, zoom in all the way in, make sure you're hitting that critter, right where you want in the heart box or whatever, and not, in its butt or in its nose or something. So, I can see wanting the skill on both sides of a variable optic. And that's why I'm trying to come up with why somebody would want a fixed optic anymore, other than ultimately rugged. But the thing is, like, I haven't heard anybody really complaining about a variable optic in years. Probably people aren't knocking them around, but even hunters and stuff don't talk about them breaking on them.
Yeah, usually you only hear about people talking about I need a rugged fill in the blank when they're playing the war game, what if in their head, my apocalypse gun, and what kind of optic you put on your apocalypse gun. And sometimes I just get tired of that Superman versus Batman conversation in the gun community.
For sure. When it's just a reflex, when there's no like thought into it, at least after 100 versions of it, I don't even listen to it anymore. That's why I make fun of the 9mm stuff, because a lot of the conversations are so petty and just frivolous, I guess, or not, not that important, or just there. And a lot of times they're just there so that you, I don't know, like understand that there's a decision to be made when you're purchasing. It's like, otherwise you wouldn't even have thought about it. But Pico comes up with another question. What do you think of the 1911 T-Sauce? Have you played with them at all? Have you
Love
shot
'em.
them?
I want them. I've actually talked to T-Sauce. I'm going to shoot him another email to see if I can get one. Um, I mean, to the point now, the T-Sauce 1911 is what the Civilian Marksmanship Project sells. They're pretty much out of World War II friggin' 1911s now as surplus guns on the Civilian Marksmanship Program, which is a government program um, designed to help increase civilian marksmanship skills. And you can buy firearms. You can join as a regular person, and you can buy surplus U.S. firearms at a significant discount compared to buying them online yourself. And they decided to go into business last year with TSOS, producing a version of the 1911, which TSOS already does, but now they also produce that 1911 for CMP. So I think they're a solid gun, and depends on what you want. One of my guys just got a TSOS 1911 and 38 Super and loves it. He also has a stakeout. I think that's what it is. It's a stakeout in 380. Excuse me, in 38 Super. Mhm. Yep, CMP TSOS 1911.
So I think I haven't played with them at all. So my opinion of them is just I like that the 1911s are still kicking, and that uh, they're not just extreme versions of 1911s, like taken to whatever tangents. So,
Hmm.
and that they're affordable. And here's something, just because I don't have that much of an opinion on them, I'm going to take it in a tangent myself. So whenever I hear tea sauce, that's turkey to me. So Turkish
Hmm.
1911s. Without what you just said, I would have said the same thing almost. But with what you just said, I like them a little bit more because I like the idea of a bone. What's it? Bone issue, whatever.
Yeah,
1911.
yeah, yeah. Issue 1911. Yeah.
Because otherwise, like I say, otherwise people take them into weird tangents or just immediately start putting rails on them and other stuff, which I have no problem with. It's just that it's nice to see that there's somebody doing a real one. But since I got nothing else really to add to this, I'm going to take it into the tangent of, you hear the argument a lot. Usually it doesn't go away, unfortunately, but whenever the conversation comes up about making machine guns legal, the
Hmm.
inevitable uh, thing will come up. Well, the reason we can't do it is because people that own machine guns don't want it to happen. As if people that own machine guns do all the gun voting. Like, they're really the
Hmm.
motivator behind all of our gun voting. The people that own like a third of a third of a percent of all the guns out there. But anyway, you can't make machine guns legal because people who have machine guns, want their guns to be expensive. Well, okay, so here's a 1911 that's bone stock being made, and you can just buy it at a Turkey. And if you have the patience and the money, you can buy as many of them as you want, and you can make them look probably as close to authentic as you want, and everything else. They're going to shoot as close to
Hmm.
authentic, and definitely like a rental place or somebody that's using them commercially is going to rather get TSOS modern ones than trying to pay the money for those old ones. All that being said, are the old ones still worth money? Yeah, they're going up in value
Hmm.
every day. And it's this kind of stuff that people will ignore. This facet of gun economy, I guess, when they say, they'll agree with, oh yeah, rich people don't want your machine guns to be legal because they'll make their machine guns worth less. I'll, I'm almost on a tangent here, but I always contend or challenge that with, no, machine gun prices will go way up as soon as machine guns are legal, because then all of a sudden you get a bunch of people who appreciate what the machine guns are and want the real one. So all these people that bought a TSOS 1911 like stock,
Mhm.
that just increased the number of people who want a real Colt or whatever, Springfield, but a Colt or a
Yep.
Singer or a Remington or one of the other
Hmm.
companies that make 1911s during World War II. Like these
Yeah.
TSOSs didn't lower the value at all, right? They definitely made the value go up. So,
No, what they did was introduce a whole group of people that might have never been thinking about buying one. It's like, what, a World War II? Yeah, it's $1,000 to get a Singer, or 1,500 or 1,700 to get a Singer. Oh, freaking out! Hey, man, T-Sauce is making these 1911s. You want to grab one? How much are they? 250? What, like 250, $300?
oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. U.S. Army marked USASF. It's MSRP is 479, and I've seen them as low as 299 on Palmetto State Armory. Like it barely breaks the $300 mark.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing where you'd like to see like single stack competitions make a comeback or something, or make like a rise at least. What? How did you get all wet?
Shoot. Hmm?
Yeah,
Oh, I
my
was
little
actually
dog.
shooting. Yeah, I
I don't
was
know.
shooting Friday night. I was shooting Friday night at a police combat course, right, where it's pretty much the police, the old school police words are failing me, qualification course, and it's done as a competition, and you go score points and everything. And they were one lady, they were shooting with a 1911 and 45 ACP. I mean, it was modernized 1911 with a beaver tail, grip, and um, is it pick rail, beaver tail, and a magwell. Like it was, kind of fancy, but man, that lady could run that pistol in 45 ACP. So I just have to laugh at all the people that talk about how it kicks and it's uncontrollable. Yeah, Maryland was running that thing like it was nobody's business. Matter of fact, I may be posting a video up of her. Oh, and I think hers is a Colt now. I'm zooming in on it. A Colt 1911 with a big ass magazine well, iron sights, and she had no problem running it.
Well, I think
10-round mag.
running an old big metal gun is like running a big motorcycle. Just looks intimidating or looks like a big deal until you figure out how to ride it, and then it's all, the thing balances itself. The thing, the motorcycle balances itself. It steers itself. You just have to be the thing instigating the movements. The big guns, they look, but they're also absorbing all the recoil. As long as you can hold it up, it's taking a
Hmm.
lot of abuse itself. It's the springs they exist for a reason.
It's interesting to me, all the people that talks about how bad a 1911 kicks. It kicks like a mule. You can't keep rounds on target. My granddad had one, and he said you could barely control it, and they couldn't hit the broadside of a bomb. So that becomes legend. And then, it gets repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. You ever think maybe your granddad got shit military training, because that's what he was talking about? Your granddad wasn't part of the volunteer army. He was part of people that got drafted, and the training kind of sucked. And then back in the day, up until hell I was in, I mean, they taught you supposed to shoot a 1911 one-handed. So now you have 1911s again. Whenever your granddad was in, whether it was the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, they still had the same gun. The newest 1911 was produced in 1945 for the U.S. military. So your granddad could have had a 30-year-old freaking gun that was a rattle trap, and they taught him to shoot it with his right hand. and he was left-handed. So yeah, he couldn't hit water if he dropped this thing off the side of a boat. But that was your granddad. He knew everything, and to your eyes, he's a legend. Meanwhile, when you look at his service record book, he barely passed any qualification. He's a legend in your eyes and maybe his mind, but he wasn't a firearms expert.
Well, a firearms expert has changed, right? So as you're saying that, I'm trying to think of like, your Sykes Fairbairn or whatever, the guys that invented knife fighting and like the books about how to fight that the Marine Corps ended up using. Like all that stuff happened at like World War I time. So up until World War I, like there was not really a special fighting or anything. Like you say, it was conscripts and it was war of attrition. Like you're going to, that war of attrition is you stand in one line and the other side stands in one line. You shoot at each other until one side has people left standing, the other side doesn't. And in those kind of situations, you're not learning a lot more than how to just shoot, right? There's no tactics really there. There's tactics are at the officer level or at the division, the larger levels than the fighter. So it wasn't until they started figuring out in World War II to teach Marines to fight all of them. Because, again, the Army, it's like, here's how you shoot a rifle, but you might be going to drive a tank or fly an airplane or flip a flapjack or sew up somebody's guts. Like, who knows what you're doing. So let's not bother teaching you everything about rifles. In the Marines, they started changing that. And then you get to special operations, start to poke through at the end of World War II. And then they all get, everybody talked about this, like then everything gets erased. And then they go, oh, we're starting a war. Let's start everything again, figure everything else again.
Hmm.
So at some point they started to keep that specialized training. And it wasn't until then that there was even such a thing as specialized fighting. Like it was, kind of happened in little spurts and then disappeared. So it wasn't like anyone could learn any special tactics or like special firearms training until very, very recently. Like you say, most of it was training for conscripts. Like, here's how you hold it. Here's how you don't hurt yourself, or the guy standing next to you hurt them. The other side. Now go. And then
Hmm.
when that guy dies, you pick up his rifle and you do it. It's that kind of fighting, not like, here's how all the stuff we do modern life.
Yeah, I mean that's the annoying part. It's like you're going to continue on just saying something like back. What was the other one? The M1 carbine is really weak all around. Isn't a good man stopper because to Chinese people the quilt coats the Chinese used in Korean War would stop a M1 carbine round. No, it wouldn't. That just doesn't even make sense in any way whatsoever. It wouldn't stop it when you fired it, in what do you call it? Within the distance that the thing is supposed to be used for. I mean, I'm sure you're not dropping somebody with an M1 carbine at 300 yards with a body shot, because that's well outside the envelope of the performance of that round. But with human wave attacks and people coming at you in the dark and whistles blowing and artillery going off and grenades, oh, I shot that guy center mass. Did you? Did you really? And you might have dropped that guy, but there were 7,000 of them running at you. Did you keep an eye on him? I don't know. I've read a bunch of stories, and the older I get and the more I read, the more it goes. The more you learn, and maybe eyewitness testimony ain't the most, isn't the best for some things because you got to throw in the fog of war, rewriting the history in your own mind of how you're seeing things, and you won't be able to convince people otherwise that it didn't happen that way. But that's the way they
Well, and you're
saw it,
writing
felt
the book. If you're writing the book and you're writing your version, then that's what gets written is
it.
your version.
Yeah, it's your version. And again, if you witnessed, you watch eyewitnesses talk about stuff, it's like, whoa, that didn't happen like that, Chief. We got video of it. Well, that's the way they remember it. And I mean, and I'm talking about things like, robberies and muggings and even car accidents. It's like, no, that's not what happened. They came out of nowhere. No, they came down the road. You just didn't see them because you weren't paying attention. Not a horrible person, and you're not a liar. That's just the way you remembered it. Same. And let's not even throw in this one. And this is what somebody told me later. there was a concerted push by the firearms industry to get people buying new guns after the Second World War. Well, there were millions of surplus guns on the market, and why would I buy a new fill in the blank when I could buy a surplus pistol or surplus rifle? Not only American surplus, but surplus from other countries. Well, there's a push going, hey, this is so much better than the thing you were issued just 5 years ago. Yeah, the M1 carbine. I mean, who would want this thing? It's not accurate. You know what I mean? When they're selling them on the market in 1965. Oh, that's some of World War II Korea tech. They weren't dropping people. They weren't dropping commies in. You should buy the new Colt AR. You should buy the new Colt SP1, not that old piece of crap carbine that your granddad used in the Chosen Reservoir, or your dad used in the Chosen Reservoir. You should buy this new thing of space age technology developed by Armalite. It's so much better. But what else
Yeah,
was
I'm
on?
sitting here talking while I'm muted. I
Oh,
was going to say that's also when, again, people don't. We don't often think about the way that stuff layered or the way that stuff like accumulated. So after it wasn't
hmm
until after World War II that there was like reloading, new calibers, like wildcatting, and like half the guns we know are since World War II. And like you're saying, like there's a factor where the companies were like, people are coming back from the war. Well, it wasn't 100%. Like in 2020 hindsight, it can certainly look like all the manufacturers conspired and made
hmm
war guns look bad. But war guns were the lowest common denominator, like or whatever you call lowest bidder. Like they were definitely designed to be guns that could be in mass. They could get just the job done and just the job done. They were designed to be lightweight, but also rugged. So it's kind of like a Ruger. They were like trying to do a jack of all trades. They did a pretty good job of it, but they definitely weren't the lightest. They definitely weren't the high tech calibers. They definitely weren't lightweight. They weren't the extremes that people wanted. So you get after World War II, you get all this ammo that's laying around. So you have all these cases, you have all this gunpowder, and you have all these bullets. Some of it's put together, and a bunch of it wasn't even put together yet because we were mobilized for fucking war. You got all these barrels, and you've got all these pieces that were all being sold for nothing. Like I
hmm
remember Grandpa telling me that you could buy a 1911 in the box, never been opened because it never got sent to war, but it was made for war, and those were $5. But so you could buy a Harley Davidson motorcycle for the same $5 in a box that was being shipped to war, or something like that. Like things were just being sold because people didn't want war stuff anymore. They got they just got done with the war. Like this isn't stuff they wanted, but they also had it in good supply and it was cheap, right? So that's when they started to go, well, what if we shaved off half the weight of this barrel and now we drill out into a new caliber and put in a better rifling? We start with a military barrel, but now we have this and it's a lightweight, better barrel and a different caliber. And they build a gun around it, and that's Weatherby. Or I don't know if that's how Weatherby started, but let's say the stuff started like that. So that's what you also have influencing it. Like, well, I could buy that carbine, which my grandpa used in the war or my dad used in the war, or I could buy this Weatherby, which is lighter and better and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to buy the Weatherby. So I think what happened is there was choices and people didn't want to touch their war shit anymore. They use that for war. I killed Nazis with that. I don't want to kill deer with my Nazi gun. I don't know. I'm just assuming that that was a factor. And then, like you're saying, the companies were like, don't buy that war stuff. That's just all war stuff. Buy our newfangled blah, blah, blah. There was no advertising for war guns. You know what I mean? There was
Well,
advertising for being everybody.
it's also this. That is cool to us now. I just remember getting out of the Marine Corps, buying my first firearms that I was excited about because I'm spending my own money. I didn't buy an AR-15. I bought a Mosin. I bought a freaking Enfield M1917 Enfield. I bought a World War II 1911. Like I bought what I thought was cool, and it wasn't what I was just issued. So I don't see why my great uncle who left the war didn't do the same. He didn't buy 1911. He didn't have a World War II, anything. He had semi-automatic 22s. He had, shotguns. My other uncle, same age, he had lever actions, he had bolt actions, he had shotguns. None of them had any World War II surplus, even though it probably cost less than the guns they did purchase. Also, remember, right after World War II, even though it doesn't seem like it to us, you had Korea pop off. You had the company start making stuff. Well, if you came from a hunting background, your hunting gun, unless you picked up a World War II something surplus and sporterized it, you might have just went back to the store and just bought a brand new Remington, brand new Winchester, or one of their off brands, what they used to call, they sell at the Sears and Roebucks. What was it, Glenfield or any of those other brands? They had those too that were made by these very same companies. And again, you might not have been looking for 30-06 with a eight, you know what I mean, with a 5-round stripper clip. That's too much gun for what you wanted to use it for. So you weren't looking for that. And
True.
then
It
by the
was
19,
16 at the day.
yeah, I mean, 30-06 is a whole lot of damn energy, dude. If all you doing is hunting within what, your longest shot might be 200 yards, maybe you don't need a 30-06. So you go with 35 rem or you go with 30-30, which were still selling like hotcakes. And then all of a sudden, 1950s are here and cowboy guns become big. So that was very, very popular through the 50s and the 60s. And going into Vietnam. So again, you didn't have people going out of their way to buy surplus World War II stuff, and they were doing crazy things with the ones anyway. They were taking, M1 carbines and making them with hot rod cartridges. I still remember, what was it, a 221 Fireball or something. They were like rechambering them and doing crazy stuff because they were cheap. They were
Right.
cheap guns.
Just like any hot rodding, right? Like you're going to do it to the stuff that
Yeah,
you can afford to do it to.
yeah. I mean, you got bubbled up freaking.
Well, you had to have enough like meat to have, you could take away material and not be unsafe, right? Like you had enough meat in those war guns to remove material.
I mean, especially when you came to the infield, American infields. Oh, you could do almost anything to them because they were built solidly for 303s. They were built to take abuse from 303s. And when we got into the war, we had the 30-06 and we could fit an extra round in them, but they were still very, very strong guns and very strong actions. So, yeah, I mean, and most people go, well, I can't even understand that. All right, understand that, when we were growing up, you and I, Mosins were sub $100 for a Mosin Nagant. I mean, you could probably get them for the 60s or 70s if you bought a couple for $70.
Hmm. Without even
Why
knowing anything.
not?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and not knowing a damn thing, just going in the store and picking them up, because they definitely just had them laying around. And if you want to cut it down and practice your home gunsmithing and go, hey, I wonder how big a fireball will come out of this if I cut it down to 16-inch barrel, a big one.
Or
Uh,
even like buy it to sand them and refinish them just to have a project for a weekend.
yeah, yeah, I want to Cerakote something. I want to practice this. I want to practice that. Go ahead, buddy. Here's a cheap gun to do it with.
All right. Well, I just realized that I've been getting a couple of texts here, and the place is going to close at the top of the hour. So, but I thought I had all afternoon, but I am going to say let's start wrapping it up so that I can book over and pick up some packages. I guess they close it in a half an hour for me.
All right. So, yeah, what's the name of the damn show I'm on again?
How many? This is the
No,
fourth one you're doing each week now? Well, if you
yeah.
do yours, it's the fourth one.
So check out Locked, Cocked, and Unfiltered. It is our new podcast between me, Clayton, and Chris. We have a lot of fun. We recorded last night. That should go up Tuesday. Speaking of Clayton, he just called. Um, the podcast goes up probably Tuesday morning. We recorded last night. It's a fun show. Uh, please comment on the show, your opinion of it, how we can make it better because this is brand new. So we're trying. And there will be very few comments, so yours will be getting a lot of weight, maybe, or you'll be cursed out and say, "Who cares what you say?" Also, I'm on Firearms Radio Network. I'm Gun and Gear Review Podcast. We recorded that Tuesday night, and that'll be great. This week, we're talking about the new Ross Martin RM1S, which is their subcompact version of their pistol. It's one I shot 2 weeks ago I shot it 2 weeks ago. Very nice shooting gun. We'll be talking about that and some other stuff, including a knife from Cobra Tech. Cobra Tech is one of those companies you should really check out. It's an American company that get their stuff made in China, but they have really good quality control and really cool knife designs that are a little bit different than Civivis and things like that. That's actually designed here by Americans, made in China, and then brought back here at a really good price. We have a lot of those. Our guy Rusty buys multiple just to check them out, and he actually donated some, and we did a giveaway on to a 4E diversity shoots with him. Also, you want to support the work I do, diversityshoot.com. You can go there and check out our schedule in New Jersey. We have 20 dates already this year. If you want to come to one, please do. We look forward to it because we educate all people from every background in the importance of Second Amendment rights and the human right of self-defense as codified by the Second Amendment. And we introduce people into guns, eat pizza, and have a great time. And then all of a sudden, when I can figure out the password and get everything together, I'll be starting up my newest episode of the Second is for Everyone podcast. So, yeah, a little busy. People ask me, how do I do it? I got a lot of free time on my hands, and I don't like to not do stuff.
That's the easiest way to get stuff accomplished. Do stuff. Well, I appreciate you taking the time each week, and everybody that jumps in. Well, I appreciate Tony for taking the time each week for jumping in and being part of the show. I also appreciate the people that join us live. We did get Pico, and was there others that joined us? A couple of different people joined us. Then they're regulars, but they're different regulars than we get on Saturdays always. So give us some feedback. When we do the live is kind of flexible, I guess. But we're not really switching to Sundays or nothing. This was because I don't know what happened, really. I think I've just been drinking a lot of Monsters this week, and I set everything up to do the show yesterday at the normal time. And I didn't even think I contacted you. I think I was just like, oh, I got 2 hours. I'm going to go lay down for a minute. And then woke up like 5 hours later. So it was just me sleeping yesterday out of nowhere after I set the show up. So this is just an accommodation to that. But we'll be back next week on Saturday. So feel free to join us. Ask your questions over at askgunquestions.com. We're not asking for your emails. I'm not secretly creating a list or anything. It's really just so that we have something to talk about and give you the opinions of people who are basically not paid to tell you anything. We're just going to give you our opinion. Sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong, but they're okay. I won't do the exit stuff.
They're worth what you.
Yeah, they're worth what you're paid, right?
Exactly.
But hopefully it's fun. We appreciate it. Don't drink Monsters. I used to work at the company. I hear you, and I probably shouldn't, but I enjoy basically it's like drinking a cup of coffee all day long without drinking a cup of coffee all day long. I think it's not the other things besides caffeine that are in them that just let you get stuff done. I've had a lot of task work to do. Is that the way to say it? Like just a lot of bulk repetitive stuff to do, and Monsters are great for just getting that, so you don't get fatigued in the monotony of it. So probably not the best for my guts, but certainly make the time fly by, or at least make the time go by where I don't keep nodding off during the work part of it. But there's side effects.
Oh, yeah.
Like yesterday, I fall asleep out of nowhere. All right, well,
that thing is not to be joked with. All right, man. Have a good one. Thanks, everybody.